Well, hello there. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Simba's Twin, the Lion King, Part 7. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Third POV. The Pride Lands. It's been 2 months since Nala ran away from the Pride Lands. The situation got so much worse after she left the Pride. Scar was more insecure than ever. He had completely lost his mind, and the way he treated the lions was vastly different from before. He felt so betrayed by Nala's running away that it broke him. Although he had many hyenas under him, he used to put the pride above everything else. But now, the way he treats them is the same. For some lions, he treats them worse than the hyenas. He was no longer the king of lions. He was more like the king of hyenas. The Pride Lands had become a complete wasteland. The thriving life of the land died at an unprecedented rate. The swarm of hyenas only grew. Their hunger had consumed the last of the prey. Mother Nature seemed to abandon the kingdom. Forget animals. There was barely any vegetation. The land was in a perpetual gloom and misery. Life was hard for the predators with nothing to eat. I don't want to hear that. Scar roared while pacing back and forth on Pride Rock. His face had an angry snarl that made him look ugly. I don't want to hear your excuses, he said while glaring at the lions below with crazed eyes. His bulk was formidable. Fat and muscles blended together to create a powerful-looking lion. But the limp in his steps, the scars on his face and the dark mane, which was bald in some places, made him look like an abomination rather than a mighty lion. They are not excuses. Sarabi, the old queen, said with detached dignity, "You can go and check for yourself. There is no longer any prey to hunt down. Then go further than before. Cover the whole kingdom if you must," he said. "There is no further." "Your kingdom has no life," Sarabi said. "My king, you are the ruler of a wasteland." Roar. Scar released an enraged roar before lunging forward. But he did not fully commit to the action and stopped himself halfway. The rest of the pride flinched, but Sarabi did not move while holding the gaze of the king. There are so many mouths to feed and not enough to go around. I warned you, Scar, but you didn't listen. You never listened. Now look what you have brought upon us all, she said. Her voice did not even gain a higher tone. She was fully detached from reality now. She didn't care anymore. She boldly argued against the king and even called him by his name. But what could Scar do? Kill her. For a lion that was starving, being killed seemed like a better option than dying from hunger. No, Scar said. No, 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 and no. This is not because of me, this is because of you, he said and growled at the queen. This is all because of you and your son. You threaten my crown and I have no choice but to increase the hyenas under me. Even till the bitter end, instead of seeing your own fault, you blame a cub that was gone 2 years ago, she said. But perhaps maybe I am also partly to blame. My son at his green age would have made a better king. That was the final nail in the coffin. Scar jumped down from his higher platform and crashed onto the queen. It was not a fight. Sarabi did not fight back. She was starved and had just come back from scouting the whole kingdom. She had no energy. She bared her teeth and raked her claws at Scar, but they barely did any damage. She could only remain still while the king mauled her, thrashing her violently on the rocky hill. The pride didn't help. They all backed away and watched the scene unfold like a bunch of NPCs. They couldn't exactly fight the king because the consequences were grave. Even if they worked together and killed Scar, the hyenas under him would do the same to them. Only one lioness moved. That's enough. Her words were mixed with the guttural sound of an angry predator. Zuri shot out like a bullet with legs. She was starved and exhausted like the rest, but youth and vigor were still on her side. She crashed on the side of Scar, her teeth clamped down on his spine while her claws dug deep into his skin. She tried to wrestle him off Sarabi, but that was no use. The difference in their mass was too much. The king, who indulged every day on food, was nearly twice as heavy as the lioness, who was starved for months. But that was enough to take his focus off Sarabi. Scar released a roar and swiped at Zuri, who tanked the blow with her shoulder. The sound was heavy, a testament to how hard Scar was hitting her. But that gave her a chance to exploit his weakness. which was his limp legs. With one paw up to deliver an attack, he was barely standing. Zuri pushed him on one side with all her strength. Scar tried but failed to catch himself. They crashed on the rocks, his back hitting jagged pebbles that caused him to cry out in rage and agony. Zuri was quick to pull back. Her aim was to push him off Sarabi so he wouldn't kill her. She never intended to fight him. Scar turned and got up quickly. He then lashed out at Zuri, who pulled back defensively. Yet before he could do anything, Sarabi got up and pushed him even further away. She might not care about herself anymore, but when Zuri's well-being was on the line, strength filled her. The three lions entered a stare-down. Scar's eyes were bloodshot. He was considering committing the taboo of killing a member of his own pride, but his remaining sanity held him back. "Traitors, both of you," Scar said. After a few seconds, his voice was calm. His eyes were cold and calculating. One would recognize this as the same eyes he had when he was plotting Mufasa's demise. Zuri, Sarabi, and Nala. These three had been nothing but an unwanted thorn in his reign. He had tolerated them for years. His patience finally ran out. Killing them would do no good to the precarious relationship he had with his pride, so he would need to be a bit more creative again to erase them from his life. "The two of you are no longer a part of my pride. If you do not wish to be in my kingdom, then so be it," he said. "You will not eat my food, you will not hunt in my land and—" Scar turned to the side and looked at the ground below the pride rocks. Hyenas were biting and eating bones, some fighting each other for scraps, while some were nursing infants. "You no longer have my protection." Countless round ears of ugly beasts twitched at his words. The hyenas turned towards Sarabi and Zuri. Sarabi's stoic face finally broke into worry as she looked at Zuri. The young lioness showed no fear. She looked at the countless hyenas that now lived in the Pridelands like they were nothing. Then she turned back at Scar and looked at him with nothing but challenge in her eyes. "I should have done this when I heard you helped your friend run away," Scar said, his words a final decree. "Let's go, Zuri," Sarabi said quickly. They both left and headed towards the cave of the Pride Rocks. It was their den and they probably shouldn't leave if they value their life. Outside, hungry jaws await. After that was done, Scar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction and a pat on the back. He should have done this way sooner. He looked at what remained of his pride. 16 members in total. 9 lionesses, 3 subadults, and 4 cubs that were older than 6 months. The lions were long but thin. But they didn't look weak by any means. They shared the wild and fierce look Scar had in his youth. Most of these lions were still loyal to him, a few of them even being obsessed with him. He might be a bad king, but every king has his own followers. "Go out to hunt again," Scar said. "If you find no success in the Pridelands, then I give you permission to venture further. Follow the herds where they went if you must." Since his main rebels were dealt with, he trusted the rest to return and not run away even if they left the Pridelands. "As you wish, my lord," one skewed-looking female said before they all dispersed to hunt. No one was in a group. They all went in different directions to cover ground. Scar watched all this and huffed, pleased even though the situation was only getting worse. If Scar had faith, it would be on the land. Pridelands was not like other regions. What they were experiencing had never happened before. So he was confident that these tough years would pass and prosperity would find him again. He climbed the peak of the Pride Rocks and gazed out in thought. Years had passed, but he never got used to the power he held. He was always so pleased with it. The land belonged to him, and that was all that mattered. He preferred the Pridelands as a wasteland to the thriving land when Mufasa ruled. After a while, he was brought out of his reverie by a sound in the sky. He looked up to see birds soaring over the blue expanse again. It was a sight that had not happened in months. When the leaves fell and water dried up, it was the birds that left the Pridelands the quickest. "Hem," he hummed while narrowing his eyes. The birds were all big and similar looking, meaning they were the same species. It was not like before when different birds roamed the sky. "Vultures?" he asked. Even among the birds, the vultures left first. All the vultures in the kingdom left before the drought even happened because hyenas were scavengers and ate everything, leaving nothing for the scavengers of the sky. It was a weird sight, but Scar took it as a good sign. If vultures were coming back, that must mean the herds might be returning too. They feed on flesh, so they wouldn't have returned to a complete wasteland. Scar released a sigh and laid his head to sleep. content and hopeful of the future. The number of vultures only increased in the sky. Scar was right, they signified a return, but not the return of the herd. First POV, I expected to reach the Pride Lands in over 2 weeks at our fastest speed of travel, but we were able to complete the journey in less than 2 weeks. This was mainly because of a few adjustments I made in strategy. After our 3rd day of travel, I noticed that the sun was a great bother in our travel. It sucked our energy to walk under the searing heat even though we walked slow and steady. So I thought to myself, why not travel during the night? Lions have night vision built into their eyes. We were not nocturnal and it was not tradition for lions to be active during the night, but who gives a shit about that when I was king? And so I decided we would travel from early evening when the sun was about to set until sunrise when it was bright. In the morning we lie in the shade and sleep peacefully. This not only saved us from the sun, but it also increased our traveling speed every day. Without the heat of the sun bothering us, we were able to maintain a consistently fast pace while not getting tired. The main issue was that we could get lost at night, but that was not an issue with vultures to scout our journey beforehand. Due to this strategy, we were able to reach the Pride Lands in under a week. Well, saying we reached the Pride Lands might not be the right word. We were in the region right beside my home. From here, we could see the elevated plateau, which was the Pride Lands. So we were basically in the Pride Lands even though we were not. I stopped our journey there and decided to give at least a day of rest to the Pride. We had been traveling non-stop and we were equally tired. If we went up the Pride Lands and conflict started, we would be at a disadvantage, and I didn't want that. We stopped in the middle of the night and slept to recover our strength. The Pride slept in the next morning as well. Lions were not just killing machines but also sleeping machines. If given the chance, they could sleep for days while only getting up to drink and pee. So even now, as I stood awake as the king, the rest of my Pride cuddled under the shade of a giant tree. Even if they were not in deep sleep, they loved to close their eyes and do nothing. The sun was not unbearable like it was in the Serengeti. The tree was mostly dry and did not provide the perfect shade, but the lions had no problem with the heat. Perhaps only Nala was the one who stayed awake with me. Both of us had a lot on our minds after all. Will you look at that? The vultures followed you, Nala said while coming up beside me. Her words directed my attention to the sky and I saw the flock of vultures that was crying and circling above. There were not as many as back in the Serengeti, but there were enough to fully decorate the infinite sky. Of course they do, Grim said, appearing suddenly beside us. He flapped his wings a few times to smooth his feathers before trotting towards us. Instead of coming beside me, Grim insisted on butting in between Nala and me. He shook his head in quick twitches and cleaned his feathers before staying at rest. The vultures serve the king and so we shall follow him wherever he goes, he said after doing all that. It's a wise decision. With my absence in the Serengeti, there won't be a whole lot to go around in terms of food, I said. I assure you, my lord, they follow you for more reasons than just food. Our lives circle around you now. We are loyal, Grim said. I shook my head. Don't get it wrong, Grim, it's not your loyalty that I question but your friends. The vultures exist in one part, and then there is you. Both of you are not one entity in my mind. But even the others will stay loyal as long as I provide them with the benefit. And I plan to do that for as long as I live, so there is no issue really, I said. Grim stayed silent, not really satisfied with my mindset, but he didn't argue. His fierce devotion and loyalty were so great that he wanted the rest of his species to share the same feeling. But I knew that was not realistic. I only need him, really. I never cared too much about the others. It's good that they came with us. We will need them soon. I hope they like hyenas, I said with a smile. My friends will eat anything that has blood, Grim said. Good, tell your friends to count their meals then. I want to know their exact number. I gave the command and Grim was happy to comply with a smile. As you wish, my lord, he said and then flew up in the sky. I did not know if vultures had kings or leaders, but Grim was something like that for the other vultures. He flew with the rest, circling a few times before he began leading them towards the plateau, which was the Pride Lands. They would enter first before we did. I did not want to go in completely blind after all. I knew the numbers could not be exact, but a rough estimate of their number would help plenty. So how long do we have to wait until we enter the Pride Lands? Nala asked me after we watched Grim and the others fly into the territory. As long as it takes us to fully recover, I said and tilted my head. So a day or maybe two. We travel at a moderate pace so we are not exhausted, just tired. Food would help though, I said, my voice trailing off as thoughts followed my words. But where will we find food here? There are barely any animals in the Pride Lands or the region surrounding it, she said, a good point. I laughed. If you are not in a complete wasteland, there is always food for a predator that can name any beast prey. It was a lesson I learned in my first dry season. Take a look at the tree under which the Pride is sleeping, I said, and Nala looked as I asked. The rest of the Pride was a good distance away. They piled and cuddled in groups under the shade of a tree. That's an acacia tree. Notice how, although it's a dry region, it still retained enough leaves at the top of the trees to provide shade for the Pride, I said, and Nala nodded. That is because the acacia has deep roots underground. So even during the long dry season, they can retain their small leaves, I said. It was a piece of knowledge I got from one of the older lionesses in the Pride. Those old gilfs were absolute treasure troves for knowledge. I learned many things about nature after I took over the Pride. Chatting with lionesses my age was fun and flirty, but spending time with the older lions always made me wiser than before. And I have one animal in mind that loves to eat those leaves. It's why they can survive in harsh regions. They don't rely on grass like most prey, and their tall body could reach the top of those trees, I said. Nala blinked and turned to me. Her face said that she finally realized what I was talking about and the animal I had on my mind. Do you want to see me kill another giant? I asked with all teeth. Nala matched my smile, her paws patting the ground excitedly. Her expression of excitement was the same as when we were cubs. It made me laugh. Yes. And so I roared towards the sky. It was a call that the vultures recognized instantly. 3 of them flew down beside me as quickly as they could. Find me a giraffe around this area, I said, and with a nod, the vultures took off. But I didn't solely rely on the vultures. I set out with Nala to track down prey as well. The vultures were simply a help. It was never good to solely rely on them. First POV, the tallest animal in the world. Giraffes. A fully grown male giraffe, referred to as the bull, can grow up to 20 feet in height and weigh around 1,800 kilograms to 2,000 kilograms. The bigger bulls can even exceed the 2,000 kilograms mark and grow even taller than 20 feet tall. Weighing on average twice as much as Cape buffalo, they are giants on the level of rhinos and hippos. They roamed the savannah with no natural predators. They stood above every living being, unbothered and content to live their lives. The only threat in their life was a fellow giraffe and nothing else. Hunting down a giraffe would be a tall task, even for me. But I was prepared. I've had wet dreams of hunting down this beast, and now I finally have an excuse to do so. Should I be concerned? You look too excited for your own good, Nala said beside me as we followed the guide of a vulture. As they were the ones with wings, the vultures were able to find the giraffe faster than we did. Apparently, the living tower was hard to miss for those that can fly, so they located it instantly. Although the giraffe was further than I would like, I couldn't move it even if I killed it, so it was almost too far. What? I'm not excited, I lied while trying to suppress my grin. Due to my duties as a king and due to constant challengers, I wasn't able to hunt other giants back home. There was always something stopping me from taking the unnecessary risk, so I never bothered. But now I had a solid reason to hunt this beast down. Of course, I was excited. Whether this was a success or not, I was already winning because of the chance to hunt them in my books. And even if I was, take it as a good sign, I said, you have to love what you do in order to excel in it. I've thought about this on multiple occasions. It was not like my first hunt with buffalo, where I was forced by necessity, so I didn't have much time to plan or strategize. I had been thinking of it for months now. I was confident in taking down a buffalo until proven otherwise. Although they were giant, they had an awkward build that was not suitable for violence. Which is more dangerous? A tank or a crane? Just because it's taller and bigger doesn't mean it will be more dangerous. Rhinos and hippos, those would be the real danger in that weight class, not Mr. Longneck. When we found the footprints and the fresh dung of the giraffe, we realized we were close. There was no talking between us then, and we slowed down our pace. We were trotting silently, not exactly stalking, but silent. A few minutes later, we finally saw our prey. Okay, he is huge, that's what she said. I always knew they were big, but with the mindset of hunting them, they appear even bigger. I nodded, sharing her sentiment. Or perhaps this one was bigger than most. I was not sure. Should we look for another target? The vulture who perched on top of an acacia tree with no leaves said. That one is a bull. I'm sure we can find a smaller target, maybe a juvenile or a female, he said. I shook my head. No, this one is perfect. If we search for others, they might be too far away. I don't want to roam that far from the Pride. Since we were so close to the Pride lands, leaving the Pride alone for too long could lead to disastrous results. Perhaps the hyenas would come down to search for food, perhaps other lions would. You never know, so I wanted to be at least close enough to respond quickly when they roared and called for me. What should I do? Nala asked me. The plan is to make him fall. With his towering stature, it's game over if he fell on the ground, so I will try to bring him down. Your job will be to come and help me kill it then, before it has a chance to retaliate or get back up, I said. Did you know that giraffes almost never lie down on the ground? They sleep while standing up, eat while standing up, and drink while standing up. Heck, they even gave birth standing up. They were super vulnerable when brought to the ground. What? But I can help you bring him down. Even if I don't have the raw power like you, I can at least distract him while you attack from the back, she said, her eyes pleading to be included. We will do that next time, when I am sure that it's safe. Right now, we are not desperate. I said, and Nala nodded, although unwillingly. She didn't argue with her king. If I didn't get a feel from the prey first, I didn't want to include my lionesses. For all I know, the giraffe could be stronger than my expectations. One hit and Nala could be dead. So as Nala waited for me behind a tree, I began stalking the giraffe. You would think that with his head so high above the ground, the giraffe would have trouble hearing things on the ground. But nope, the giraffe picked up on my presence in an instant, and he looked at me. I could see his eyes locking on me. Giraffes had excellent eyesight, unlike buffaloes. They were basically a living watchtower. The giraffe saw me but didn't react. Instead, he turned his body to face me and continued feeding on the leaves on top of a tree. I, too, stopped the pointless stalking and strolled towards him. I walked towards him at an even pace while my eyes scanned the prey. I searched for any injuries on him. Perhaps he had an old wound, or maybe a weakness. The giraffe was also sizing me up and down while chewing on leaves. His blue tongue was long and occasionally came out from his mouth to eat more leaves. When I was close to a giraffe, I stopped walking forward and instead circled him. He tried to keep an eye on me and turn his body to face me, but as I quickened my pace, he was not able to keep up. I jogged in circles around him, searching for an opening. But a few seconds of circling taught me there was never going to be an opening. I had to make one myself. So I changed direction at lightning speed and sprinted towards him. I was not a master of speed, but I was a master of acceleration. In just a second, I was like a truck going at full speed. But even at such speed, the giraffe was able to react. He twisted his long body and turned to face me. His front hooves immediately came up before they were brought down with incredible force. He was slow and his attacks were easy to predict due to the long limbs. But what made my eyes go wide was the sheer accuracy and timing the attack had. If I didn't do anything, I was going to head straight for the hooves. So I acted quickly and turned my body. I slid on the dry ground, stirring up a cloud of dust before I was able to stop. Right then, the hooves stomped on the ground. The force released a muffled thud, like the solid ground was flesh. The hooves left a huge dent and the vibration was enough to be felt under my paws. It was powerful. It was more than enough to crack a skull and kill a lion. But that was not the main attack. Instinct screamed. The cloud of dust blocked my vision, but I could see something cutting through the smoke. I leapt back with the lightning reflex of a cat, just in time to dodge a wrecking ball. No, not a wrecking ball. It had a long neck and a thick skull. But the force behind it was the same as a wrecking ball. It flashed past me, but the sheer whiplash made me think I got hit for a moment. After the head swung by, the smoke was cleared instantly. I was glad I didn't allow Nala to come with me. That was a death sentence to most lions. And the way he used the smoke to hide the main attack. I realized then that the giraffe was smart and had probably killed many lions with that move. The giraffe huffed when he realized he missed. But without pause, He brought up his hooves again and began stomping towards me. His attacks were strong but too slow and predictable for a cat. I moved back, dodging the hooves that smashed the earth repeatedly in place of me. The attacks were relentless and violent. Each one was enough to kill a lion. One hit and game over. But my smile only got wider at that risk and danger. I was not only dodging the attacks, but I was also counting the rhythm. A few seconds passed, and I finished my study. When his hooves stomped on the ground, my jaw went straight for it. I was much quicker than he was, so I was able to bite at his leg. It was the same tactic I would use on a buffalo. But a giraffe was not a buffalo. The leg was so much thicker and sturdier on the giraffe. My brief bite did no damage as he pulled back with an angry hum. And then his neck swung and swung his head like a wrecking ball. I pulled back in time, but the head whipped right past my mane. It was way too close for comfort. I did not want such a deadly blow to be that close to me. And then the giraffe tried to stomp me again. Now that shows why a giraffe was less threatening than a buffalo. He followed the same rhythm, the same style. So I moved when I predicted an opening. Instead of moving back to dodge, I lunged forward. I slammed on his powerful chest. My claws came out and anchored on the hide. My teeth also found flesh as I hung on the giraffe like that. At his lower neck, I was also tall enough to touch the ground. But I hung on because I wanted to weigh him down with my weight. 400 kilograms weighing down on him should be enough to bring it down, right? Right and wrong. The giraffe was going to fall, but he caught himself with his long legs. I tugged and he fell again, but caught himself again right on time. He stumbled like that many times, falling but never crashing on the ground. And then he finally caught himself properly. How the hell was he able to carry my weight? I did not know. The giraffe began stomping and hopping. The movement caused my claws to tear the skin and come off. I was not able to carry my weight with my jaw alone, so in the end, I fell off. When you were under a giraffe, the danger was off the charts. It was only my cat reflexes that saved me from getting stomped. I moved towards the back, passing between the hind legs. His back leg kicked and the hooves whipped past me, barely grazing my skin, but I was lucky enough to dodge. I will admit that it was pure luck that I escaped unscathed. After I escaped from under him, the giraffe ran off. He no longer tried to fight me off as he realized the danger I posed. And I let him. It was way more dangerous than I thought, so I didn't bother chasing it again. It was also running further away from the pride, so chasing after it would not be wise. My teeth and claws managed to injure him, though as he left, drops of blood marked where he ran. But it was not enough to bring him down. I sighed a deep sigh. I did not underestimate the giraffe. I fared with the giant as well as I thought I would. But what I underestimated was the danger. When I hunted a buffalo, I heavily underestimated them, but I also overestimated their danger. When I wrestled with one, I realized I could tank their strength with my body now. I was stronger than I thought. But that was not the case for a giraffe. There was no doubt in my mind that the giraffe could kill me with one mistake. One mistake, that was all there was between life and death. Nala walked up to me after the giraffe was long gone. "Sorry, Nala, seems I let him escape," I said with a smile. "No, that was incredible." Nala said, genuinely, "You nearly got him." Not really, but I didn't say that. "I know we'll get him next time," she said, and I agreed. An actual experience of fighting a giraffe, although brief, would help me plan for the next hunt. I couldn't promise next time would be a success, but I now knew that it was possible to bring down a giraffe. "Let's go back before the others wake up," I said. My failure was a win for me. It was a much-needed humble pie before what awaits me. First POV, 347 hyenas in total, one vulture said in front of the pride. Multiple vultures were standing in a line before us, so we looked to the other one after giving a nod to the previous one. "I count 321 of them," another vulture said. We nodded and looked at the next. 401, another said. 367, 289. 301, 322. 345, 330. And so on. The number each counted was different because it was not so easy to get the exact number from above. There was also an issue. While some counted the pups, others only counted the adults. I should have been clearer on my command, but this was fine too. So it's around 300 to 400 hyenas living in the Pridelands, I said. That was the rough estimate. No wonder your kingdom is a wasteland. That many hyenas would eat away even the Serengeti, Esh commented while looking at Nala. Grim, what is your estimate? I asked my most trusted vulture. Unlike the rest, he was sitting beside us like he was a part of the pride. The same as you, my lord. But I think it's more around 300 than 400, he said. The lions, on the other hand, are much fewer. There are a total of 12 fighting-age lions and lionesses. The pride wouldn't matter. It's Scar and the hyenas that are the enemy, Nala said, hopefully. I nodded. Okay, you can go now, I said to the vultures. After they left, the pride held a sort of committee with the new information. We discussed the danger, the strategy, and how we would approach the enemy. Hyenas are weak by themselves, but 400 of them are not easily defeated. That's almost 8 hyena clans together, Salima, one of the older lionesses, said. Yes. But those numbers are manageable with our king. The main question is what role he is going to play in the battle. Are we going to hold off the hyenas while our king defeats Scar? Or should we fight the hyenas together first, and then the king challenges Scar afterwards? Esh said. That depends on how Scar's death will affect the battle. If the hyenas lose morale with his death, then the former is a better strategy, Kessia added. Hyenas are not lions. The death of Scar will have virtually no effect on them. We need to think of them as different entities, Salima said. Does that mean fighting the hyenas first will be the better option? But what if the king suffers injuries and struggles in the fight with Scar? Even with all his power, an exhausted lion is still vulnerable, Esh said. The younger lionesses were quiet and just listening. It was the old lionesses and the top hunters who were discussing. I didn't say anything either. I was the king. The final decision lay with me. But before making that decision, I should listen to what my pride has to say and base my final choice on that. I don't think Leo, our king, will struggle with Scar in any situation. Scar is old, is crippled, and lost one eye. He suffered permanent injury from their previous clash, Nala added, the only young lioness who was speaking out. But that was mostly because she knew more than the older lionesses when it came to the Pridelands. That was why she had that privilege. Our king defeating Scar might not affect the hyenas, but it will affect his pride. If the pride accepts our king as their new ruler, then they will help us fend off the hyenas later on, making the battle much easier, Sana said. Everyone nodded at that. It was a good point. But still, it was not sure, because a pride usually doesn't accept their new king so quickly like that. But this was my home, and I was the rightful heir, so they might. Why are we planning for one big battle? Can't we think of another strategy? They are starving in their land, right? What if we leave them alone for now? They will starve and get weaker, and we can kill whoever comes down to hunt, reducing their number, Amara said, giving a fresh perspective. That's what discussions like this are for. That is a great strategy, but you miss out on the part where we might starve too. A pride as big as ours is not easy to sustain, especially if we can't cover ground since we are guarding them from hunting outside their kingdom, Esh said. The discussions went on for a while until everyone had nothing to say. I stopped the discussion by getting up from my lying position. At my gesture, everyone stopped, realizing that I was going to make the final decision. But before I spoke, Grim stopped me. I have something to report. I thought it would not be of much importance, but listening to all this, I think it's vital that you know, Grim said. And I let him. What he said next was indeed a vital piece of information. It managed to change even my previous decision completely. Grim talked about what he observed from above, about 2 lionesses that briefly fought their king, Scar, before he effectively kicked them out of pride, and they retreated to their den ever since. I did not need names. From the way they acted and the way they rebelled, Nala and I could guess who they were. I'm sure of it, my lord. Those must be Zuri and your mother, Nala said after listening to Grim report what he had seen. I know, Nala. I know, I said. No one else spoke. They looked at me with surprised faces because it might be the first time they saw me worried or concerned. With the way things went, I realized what Scar was planning to do with them. By effectively kicking them out of the pride like that, he was leaving them to be killed by the hyenas. The real battle will have to wait until we rescue those 2. And before anyone says anything, know that those two are the reason why we are fighting this battle in the first place, I said. If we start the war without rescuing them, Scar, in his final moments, might decide to hurt me by killing them or doing something to them. While he was sane, I didn't think he would, but if driven to the corner, he might lash out. And if he does something to them, that would hurt me more than 1,000 jaws could. We can't reveal ourselves until those two are safe, I said. Grim, I will need you for what I have in mind. No one else can do it but you. The vulture stood straight and puffed out his chest before he nodded, his eyes determined to complete whatever mission I was going to give him. Third POV, it was night in the Pride Lands, but the Pride was still out scouring the kingdom for prey. That left only Scar, Sarabi, and Zuri in Pride Rock. The king perched on top of the rocky hill, sleeping peacefully with a hopeful dream where the prey and vegetation returned to the Pride Lands. The kingdom was thriving once more in his dream. On the other hand, Sarabi and Zuri had not gotten a wink of sleep. It was hard for the mind to rest when it was aware of its own impending death. No, it can't be like this, Zuri said as she paced around the cave. Sarabi, on the other hand, was deadly calm while watching her. We need to do something. We need to leave, she said and looked at the entrance of the cave. But both of them knew it was impossible. The Pride Lands were infested with hyenas that would gladly kill them. They were not allowed on Pride Rock, so they were safe here while they stayed. But the moment they went down, that would be it. They also knew Scar had stationed some hyenas on the path that led down to the outside world. He did this after Nala left, so no one could escape without permission. I'm sorry. You got into this trouble because of me, Sarabi said. But there isn't much we can do, Zuri. It's either we try to fight our way out of the kingdom or we starve here to death. No. We can't think like that. I just need a few more months. It's already been 1.5 years, she said, her tone full of pain. In a few months, he will come back. He will come back for us. She said. He will come back for me. Sarabi sighed at the blind hope of the young lioness. We just need to find a way to survive until then, she said and turned to Sarabi. Please, at least we need to try. Sarabi was full of guilt when she looked at the young lioness. But right then, when all hope seemed lost, they heard a flap of feathers and wings. Both lionesses paused before turning towards the vulture that had landed at the entrance of the cave. Grim did not bother scanning the cave. Instead, he fixed his feathers and shook his body to smooth himself. As the most loyal servant of the king, he must always look presentable. He can't look rugged and wild like the rest of the vultures. He twisted his head and plucked a small ingrown feather from his neck and finally turned towards the two lions. Okay, he began. Greetings, lionesses of the Pride Lands. I come to you as HHH. Grim leapt from his spot just in time to dodge Zuri, who flew towards him like a bullet. With the state of her stomach, she would eat anything. Now, a vulture just presented itself in front of her, so of course, she would take the chance. Is this how you treat your WHAA? He jumped again while flapping his feathers wildly. Zuri barely missed him. They chased each other around the cave for a while, a blur of flapping feathers and claws. Grim had success in dodging her for a few seconds, but ultimately, she got him. Zuri bit him by the end of his feathered tail and then brought him to the ground. She pinned him under her paw, her weight pressing on his chest, and that made him wheeze. I really didn't think this through, did I? He wheezed out. Stop it, Zuri! He managed to say before she bit his head off. The mention of her name made her pause. Her eyes narrowed. How do you know my name? I am here to help. Please do not eat the help, he said. I come at the command of my king, Leo, to rescue the two of you before the war starts. What? What? Sarabi and Zuri said in sync. The old lioness came up to Grim immediately. Zuri also stopped her snarls and blinked with confusion and hope. But first, please get off me, Grim said, wheezing. Oh, sorry. Zuri moved her paws off him. Grim took in a deep breath before slowly getting up. His talons came up to lightly smack his own chest. Okay, where was I? Right, Grim began once more. I come at the command of my king, Leo, whom you know of. And I have come to rescue you from your peril. Leo? He is here. Zuri asked, her eyes perking up, her voice so hopeful that you would rather weave 1,000 lies than disappoint her. Yes, Zuri, he said. Your king has returned. Then where is he? She asked and immediately looked around, as if wishing dearly for him to appear out of thin air. He is waiting for you, Grim said. On the other side of all this. We just need to wait for a signal, he added. A signal? What signal? Sarabi asked. And as if on cue, thunder split the sky. No, not thunder. It was a roar. It tore through the night like the earth itself was breaking apart. Sarabi and Zuri froze at the sound. Then they both ran outside the den to listen to the roar. After the first roar died down, another came. This time, it was even louder. It was a guttural avalanche of sound that rolled over the wasteland and shook the marrow of every creature still clinging to life. The silence of the Pride Lands, starved and hollow, only made the roar louder. It was no ordinary lion's cry. It was so much more than the pathetic roar that Scar used to bellow in his patrol. Scar's roar sounded like a meow compared to this. It was deeper and heavier, as though a mountain had found a voice. It dragged low at first, a growl from the pit of creation, then rose into a shattering bellow that punched holes in the night. Every ear turned. The scouting lionesses froze mid-step. The sleeping hyenas snapped awake to feel fear, and Scar himself woke up from his dream to a nightmare. The roar filled the night. That's the signal, Grim said and urged the two lionesses. We should go while everyone is distracted. Zuri and Sarabi did not need to be told twice as they followed Grim. They were not aware of the plan, nor did they know if they should trust the vulture. The reason they moved was because of the command in the roar. Roar. Zuri felt her heart beating loudly in her chest. She couldn't help but adore the angry roar threatening the sky. You did it. You fulfilled your promise. You came back, she said as she ran, leaving silver tears behind her. Third POV, ears turned to the roar that dominated the night sky. The hyenas, although not lions, knew immediately that the roar did not belong to Scar. Because Scar's roar never scared them, but this one did. The roar terrified them down to the oldest instinct. If they were not hundreds, all would have fled the kingdom. The intensity and might of sound could not be faked. Their mind told them to stay, to not fear a single lion when there were many. But their body said exactly the opposite. Any creature that could make such sound should be feared and avoided at all costs. But not all hyenas were fearful. Some reacted worse to the roars. While others had a fearful face and a cautious look, some of them screamed. They screamed. The hyenas who screamed were all newcomers who had joined the Pride Land recently. You could easily tell them apart because the newer members were smaller and weaker than the ones who had stayed in the Pride Land since Scar's rule. These hyenas were having a mental breakdown. They ran around, screaming in panic like someone had brought out their worst trauma. Unlike most, the roar was familiar to them. They recognized the lion who could produce such roars. After all, these hyenas came from the Serengeti. What the hell is wrong with them? A female hyena who was one of the most dominant in the clan said while looking at the hyenas who had joined them recently. Calm down, she screamed. What are you scared of? Are you scared of a lion? Is that why all of you are panicking? But no one heeded her words. They continued panicking and showing fearful behaviors even though the screaming and running around had stopped to an extent. Feeling disrespected, she took down one of the smaller hyenas and pinned him to the ground. Let me go, the hyena said, trying to escape from her. Not until you tell me why you are reacting like this. Do you fear lions that much? How come you serve Scar then? She asked. You don't understand, do you? Well, how could you? You weren't there, he said, still struggling. I knew the vultures were a bad omen. I knew they wouldn't circle us like that for no reason, he said. He is here now. He came all this way just to kill us. His hatred knows no bounds, he said. That was one of the reasons why the hyenas who came from the Serengeti were all having a panic attack. There was no reason for them to hear that roar, no reason for Leo to come all this way. They thought he was coming to kill them. Let go of me, bitch. He made one final struggle and tried to escape. But he was quickly overpowered, and she slammed him on the ground. He released a pained puppy noise, and his body went limp. Tell me, who is coming? She asked. The tailless lion, he choked out. The hyena blinked. When she heard the word tailless, she recalled one lion whom she chased out of the Pridelands years ago. The Lion King Leo is coming. It was not just the old hyenas who were freaking out and learning who was responsible for the roar. Scar woke up to a nightmare. The roar that forced itself into his eardrums was a chilling reminder of a promise. A lion whom he thought was even more dangerous than Mufasa. Sleep left him the moment he opened his eyes. He got up and ran to the ledge of Pride Rock to hear the roar again. It was unmistakable. There could be no other lion. He is early, was all Scar said as he watched his kingdom crumble before him. No, he said. Malice filled his eyes and determination twisted his face. He had almost 2 years to prepare for this, just like Leo had. Scar had been doing everything possible in his power to welcome this very same day and make sure the promise remained unfulfilled. He opened his mouth and released a roar from the lowest pit of his being. A roar rumbled out, challenging and failing to match Leo's roar in the sky. A snarl left his throat, and he stopped roaring. He was only embarrassing himself trying to compete. Right then, his eyes snapped with a realization. He turned around immediately and ran down Pride Rock and crashed into the lion's den. Sarabi. Zuri. He called them, but only his own echo greeted him. The lionesses were gone. Damn it. Scar cursed out in guttural hatred before quickly running out of the den. He climbed the Pride Rock and headed towards its highest point, where he could see the entirety of his kingdom and the endless horizon. It was night, so it was hard to see. But as he looked around, luck was on his side because he saw the 2 lionesses running away from the Pride Rocks. He roared immediately. It was a command that immediately got the attention of the hyenas staying below at the base of the hill. They are escaping. Get them! He screamed. And a wave of hungry hyenas chased after Zuri and Sarabi. They had been distracted by Leo's roar, which was how they were able to slip past them. But at the command of the king, they ran full force to chase them down. Kill them! Scar said, giving the last order. The hyenas hollered in excitement. They were scavengers, and if given the chance, they would very much eat a lion's meat. Their starved bodies went into beast mode. Now they were no longer just obeying the order of the king but also their instinct. They laughed and cackled as they tailed behind the 2 lionesses. Third POV, they are coming right after us. We'd better hurry. Zuri screamed when she saw the wave of hyenas behind them. Normally, a lion is much faster than a hyena, but Zuri and Sarabi were starved. Not to mention Sarabi was currently wounded from her conflict with Scar. She was dragging the whole team down and slowing them. She knew this, and she gritted her teeth and pushed her body to the limit. Tell that to yourself, I can fly, Grim said while slowing down and flying right above them. You're not helping. Zuri cried out. She was caught between looking back to see how close the hyenas were and looking forward so she didn't crash into a random tree. They continued running as fast as they could, but it became increasingly evident that the hyenas were catching up to them. Especially over long distances, hyenas were not far off compared to lions that mainly rely on bursts of speed. Stop slowing down for my sake, Zuri. Just leave me behind if you must, Sarabi said, trying her hardest to keep her speed. Not a chance, we're almost there, Zuri said, her face emotional. He is finally here. We can't give up now. They continued running. Zuri repeatedly urged Sarabi, motivating her to push beyond her limit. Bird. Are you sure we are going the right way? Zuri asked when Grim led them away from all the escape routes that she knew of. Suffice it to say, Zuri knew the Pride Land like the back of her paw. So as she continued following Grim, she quickly realized they were not heading towards any known escape routes that led outside the kingdom. The only reason why she continued following Grim was because she knew there were hyenas stationed in every escape route, as mentioned before. So perhaps the bird was leading her to an unknown route, or maybe he was leading them to a safe place to hide. First you tried to eat me and then you doubted my direction. I can't take such disrespect for long, Grim said while looking at her upside down while flying. I will have you know my precise sense of direction has won countless battles, he said proudly. This is nothing. Zuri groaned. Nothing. She was running for her damn life, and this is considered nothing? At last, the hyenas caught up to them. Sarabi could feel their hot breath and their phantom teeth on her tail. Their snarl was wild, and even though she tried her best, she lagged behind. I guess this is it, Sarabi thought to herself. She mentally prepared herself to stop running and fight the hyenas head-on. Instead of dying like some insect, she would fight and hopefully slow down the hyenas enough for Zuri to get to safety. No. Don't. Zuri screamed, as if she read her mind and knew her intention. Sarabi simply gave a smile. She had so many regrets, and not being able to see her son for the last time would be at the top of the list. But then, stop looking back and look up, Grim said, a grin in his tone. Sarabi and Zuri looked up immediately and saw the vultures circling in the sky. The sky was dark, so they were barely visible, but now they were close to the ground so they could see them. There were dozens, no, hundreds of them. Airstrikes incoming, Grim yelled, and then, right on cue, the vultures dived towards them. Zuri and Sarabi gasped and ducked their heads. A few vultures flushed right past their heads and then slammed into the hyenas running behind them. They both looked back, just in time to see the hundreds of vultures slamming their talons or their whole bodies at the wave of hyenas. The action was effective, as the wave of hyenas stopped in an instant. Even the ones not hit by the vultures stopped and attacked the birds. In their hunger, they would take any prey that presented itself to them, and not just Zuri and Sarabi. Grim flew down and perched on top of Zuri's back. Finally, go earn your meal, you lazy bastards. Do it for the king, he said, not joining them but ordering the rest. Some hyenas slipped from the group and continued pursuing them. But the majority of the hyenas were completely preoccupied by the vultures. Now, instead of an uncountable wave of hyenas, a dozen or so chased after them. Oh shit, that guy just got his head bitten off, Grim said, his hype tone dying in an instant when he witnessed the brutal events that followed. There was not much the vultures could do against the hyenas. Some vultures passed out when they slammed into a hyena, leaving themselves vulnerable for others to tear them apart. The ones that survived the initial strike continued harassing the hyenas, but even that was a dangerous deed. The hyenas leapt and caught the birds by their wings or tails, dragging them down and killing them between their jaws instantly. It was truly a wonder what Grim had told those vultures to be able to basically go kamikaze on the hyenas. We may never know. He leapt off Zuri's back and took to the sky again. A little more, we are almost there, he said. And the escape continued. A few minutes later, Grim flew down and perched on top of a tall, bald tree. Zuri and Sarabi stopped running after that. They wanted to fall on the ground and die of exhaustion, but they had no such privilege, so they panted like dying animals. Sarabi was in a worse condition than Zuri. She could barely stand. Zuri panted heavily while looking around. There was confusion on her face that slowly turned into horror. You damn vulture, where are we? She asked while turning to Grim, who was perched on the tree. They were in the middle of nowhere. They were at the edge of the kingdom, and just beyond them was a cliff that was not possible for animals to climb down. They were literally just stuck there, with nowhere else to go. We are right where we needed to be, Grim said and began cleaning his feathers. What? You said you would help us escape, she accused him. Indeed, I said that. But I never said I would lead you to an escape, he said, leaving Zuri stumped and not knowing how to argue next. We are at the most isolated part of the kingdom. This region has no watering hole left, so barely any hyenas or life in general stay here, he said. And that is supposed to help us how? She asked, but before she got her answer, the hyenas reached them. Sarabi and Zuri turned around. The hyenas that chased after them were much fewer because of the vultures' attack. Zuri counted 14 as they stood before them one by one. They growled, snarled, and barked. But they were just as exhausted as the lionesses, so they took their time to catch their breath. The two groups entered a stare-down, and Grim took this chance to answer her question. This place is perfect because other than the ones that followed us, there are no other enemies left, he said. And the goal was never to go towards an escape route, but to lead them to the perfect ambush spot, he said and then grinned. Even the hyenas who heard him were alarmed by that. And right on cue, predators shot out from behind the trees and bushes. Lionesses, the best Leo's pride had to offer. Ishiba, Esh, Sana, Imani, and then Nala. All 5 lionesses ambushed the hyenas while they were exhausted. Zuri and Sarabi only watched as they made quick work of the 14 rabid dogs. They killed swiftly and efficiently. Some hyenas tried to run, but they were caught like baby prey. The whole thing only took 30 brutal seconds, and it was over. After the dust settled, Nala made a beeline towards Zuri. "Zuri," she said, rocketing towards her friend and going for a hug. Zuri was too tired to respond properly, but her face had a smile. She allowed herself to be tackled on the ground, her tired body finally relaxing for a bit. Third POV. After the reunion was over, Sarabi and Zuri were given time to catch their breath. But they did not have a lot of time to rest because the Pride Lands were infested with hyenas, and right now, they were all searching for them. They were in an isolated region in the kingdom, but sooner or later, they would be caught. The lionesses did not stay too close to Zuri and Sarabi, both because they were not familiar and because the two tired lionesses needed to be given breathing space. Zuri looked at the lionesses one by one, assessing them carefully because they were lionesses from Leo's pride. She knew this because Leo's promise involved him raising an army before coming back, in other words, getting a pride before coming back. And she could put two and two together. These lionesses were from Leo's pride, and that is why they were helping her and why Nala was among them. Each of the lionesses was beautiful and powerful. Every female was a league ahead of whatever Scar had in his pride. If she truly admired them, she would feel insecure and insufficient because she was frail and weak in her current state. Nala was already thin when she escaped, but the 2 months since then had been worse than ever, so Zuri was even skinnier than Nala was. She was so thin that you could see her ribs whenever she exhaled. She was secretly glad Leo was not with them, even though she missed him badly. She really did not want to meet him in her current ugly state. What if he was turned off by her unappealing appearance and chose the beautiful and powerful lionesses he already had over her? At least before he was kicked out, food was plentiful, so she was thick in the right places and was an attractive female. But now, Scar's incompetence was marked on her body. She shook her head. Such insecurities had no room in the current situation. "Get your priorities straight," she told herself. "How did you get here? All the escape routes are guarded by hyenas, right?" She asked Nala to change the topic of her thoughts. Nala smiled, glad her friend was in a state to talk now. The Pride Lands has only a few escape routes but lots of entrance routes. "We climbed up the cliff there," Nala said and gestured towards the steep cliff just beyond them. Zuri nodded, understanding dawning on her. Climbing something was much easier than getting down from the same height. But the rocky cliff of the Pride Lands was still difficult terrain to cross. Which is why only the best and the most fit the Pride had to offer climbed up for the rescue mission. "Now we just need to head towards the nearest escape route, fight through the hyenas stationed there, and then we will be safe," Nala said, telling her the plan. They couldn't get down from the same cliff they scaled up. It was much more dangerous, so escape routes were much safer, even if they had to fight some hyenas for it. "If you've caught your breath, then we should leave as soon as possible," Esh said while looking around carefully with sharp eyes. Nala looked past Zuri and looked at Sarabi, who was in much worse shape. She was surrounded by 3 lionesses who looked at her with respect. It seemed like she was even more important than Zuri. Well, giving birth to Leo would naturally earn you the respect of all lionesses in the world. "Just a little more, Sarabi. We are nearly safe," Nala said, to which the old lioness laughed. "Geez, it's weird being the one dragging down others. I guess I'm getting old," she said. Sarabi, in her prime, was the fiercest hunter in the Pride. She was only below Mufasa, and she was usually the one to help others instead of the other way around. She was used to carrying others, not being carried by others. "And it's good to see you healthy, Nala," she said. Nala smiled and nodded. After a few more minutes of rest, the group was on the move again. Zuri and Sarabi were put at the center of the formation, and under the guidance of Grim, they headed to the nearest escape route. Luckily, there were only 9 or so hyenas stationed there. But all the hyenas were fresh, so it took a few minutes for the lionesses to take them down. But in the end, they managed to crush all obstacles and escape from the wasteland. When outside, they walked for another half-hour before they rejoined the rest of the Pride. Their return was celebrated, and both Zuri and Sarabi finally collapsed. They did it. They escaped. For a moment, everything seemed fine. But there was one lioness who was still not at peace. "Where is he?" Zuri thought to herself while looking at the faces of strangers in the Pride. Sarabi immediately fell asleep, or maybe unconscious, but Zuri fought off the desire to sleep and searched for his face. But he was nowhere to be found. Leo will return soon. He went to the opposite side of the kingdom to distract the others with his roar, Nala said. You should rest. Zuri shook her head. She hadn't even greeted the other lionesses in the pride yet. Her mind only had one person. There was no room for more at this moment. I've waited all this time. I can wait a few more hours, she said stubbornly. And so she did. She waited for an hour. The final hour of her wait felt like an eternity. It felt longer than the years she had endured before. But eventually, he returned. She didn't even catch his figure for long. She saw a giant lion walking towards the pride. He stopped for a second, perhaps recognizing her scent, before he sprinted straight towards her. By the time he got close, Zuri felt warmth all over her body. Her eyes were blinded by the pooling of tears, the darkness of the night not working in her favor either. And when his wide frame encapsulated hers, she broke down. Zuri, he called her, his voice deep and intimidating, but his tone tender in a way that stripped all her fears instead of inflicting them. My Zuri, he said. A familiar scent hung on a not-so-familiar body. She barely recognized him with all the mass he had put on, and with her eyes constantly blurred by her tears, she could barely see anything. But it was him. She knew with her heart. The heart knows its owner. I came back for you. Sorry I made you wait for so long, he said. She couldn't speak, she dared not talk back. But he seemed to know everything unsaid. His presence and gentle touch soothed fatigue that had built for years. She buried her face in his thick mane. They were dark, soft fur, which she used to muffle her sobs. She didn't think she would cry when they met again. She always thought she would have the biggest smile. But the pinnacle of happiness was tears, and that was all she could offer. After crying for a long time, she finally had enough in her to speak. She could have said literally anything. She would have loved to say welcome back or say how much she missed him. But what came out was a question. Why did you come back? She asked. She truly did not know why she asked that. She nearly hated herself for asking that. But he seemed to know her better than she knew herself. There was something she wanted to hear so desperately, yet she didn't even know she wanted to hear it. But he knew. What he said next was the answer her soul was crying and begging for. I came back because I love you, he said. Oh, how perfect. She waited because she loved him, and he came back because he loved her. She didn't say, I love you, but it was okay. Both had proven their love with action. So after hearing the thing her soul wanted to hear, Zuri collapsed on him. Completely at ease, for she couldn't have been safer. First POV, stop struggling, I said while holding down the lioness who was not part of my pride. She was one of Scar's females. Let me go, you big, fat cat, she said while struggling but failing to get out from under my paw. Big talk for someone who can't even handle one of my arms, I said and applied more weight. Her mouth opened agape, and she couldn't breathe anymore. It also meant she couldn't speak anymore, so that was good. The way we met required a bit of a backstory. Currently, I am on a rescue mission. But instead of joining the real rescue party, I went completely opposite to the region where it would take place. I stood right before the steep cliff leading up to the Pride Lands and began roaring there. My roar was loud enough to reach the whole kingdom in the silence of the night, even though I was technically not inside. My roar worked as a distraction that would drive the attention of hyenas and Scar alike towards me instead of Zuri and Sarabi. It was also a signal for the operation to start. But as I began roaring and announcing my presence to the whole world in warning, one lioness attacked me from beneath the darkness of the bushes. It was a lioness of Scar's pride who went outside the kingdom in search of food. Apparently, Scar told them to do that. I guess he was getting desperate if he did such things. I continued roaring with the lioness beneath my paw. I would occasionally stop to rest my throat, during which I questioned the female beneath me. I wasn't asking anything important really. My intention was not to get information out of her because I can get that from Grimm. The questions I asked were more for my personal curiosity than anything. Do you have eyes? I asked. She didn't reply. She only continued struggling. I pushed my weight on my paw, and the weight on her was enough to crush her ribs. Only then did she speak. What kind of question is that? Of course I have eyes, she said while glaring at me hatefully. I doubt that, I said, causing her to whine. If you really have eyes, You must see me, right? You must see my sheer size, the length of my claws, the volume of my mane and the danger of my jaw. She didn't answer. Now I poked out my claws and dug into her skin. A drop of blood finally made her talk again. Of course. Yes. I see them, she said. I nodded. So my question is, what makes you think that attacking me would be a good idea? Did your scrawny ass really think you were going to do something? I asked and roughly slapped her ass with my other paw. She was very lanky and small, the drought evident on her body. But I was not too rough with her because she was going to be a part of my pride soon anyway. After I kill Scar, that is. She struggled like a cat and hissed at me. But she was not able to achieve anything. I ignored her for another moment as I roared 3 times in the sky. The same thing goes on for a long time. It might have been an hour, if not more. I continued harassing the poor lioness. I might not look like it, but I was extremely concerned and worried about the rescue mission. It was why I was playing with the enemy in the first place, to get my mind off the situation so that I did not stress too much about things I could not control. I have made the best plan I can. It is out of my power now. I had to put my trust in my subordinates. Soon after, I saw Grim flying towards me. I waited with bated breath and my heart stopped beating completely until I heard the news. The mission was a success, my lord. Zuri and Sarabi are being led to the rest of the pride as we speak, he said, and my heart started beating again. A huge sigh left my mouth. It felt like a mountain had been moved from my shoulder. The lioness, on the other hand, cursed out loud when she heard the news. I turned to the lioness again, this time with a serious face. I no longer needed her to relieve my stress and she sensed that. She did not make a sound and completely froze. I bent down and opened my jaw. She tucked her neck so that I couldn't bite her, but that didn't help. I put her whole head between my jaws. Her whole body trembled. I closed my jaw slightly and my teeth poked fear into her body. The smell of urine tickled my nose. I could kill her so easily. I could kill her by accident. I knew that. She also knew that. I pulled back after that. I stared deep into her eyes. Return back to your pathetic king. Tell him to prepare well. Next time he hears my roar, there will be nothing holding me back. I let her go. She slipped out quickly like a rat and ran away as fast as she could. I turned away and headed back towards the pride. Excitement and nervousness stirred in my heart in perfect chaos. I hurried back home, but even then, it took me more than an hour to reach the pride. It would have been past midnight when I reached the rest of my pride. The moon was nearly full and shining brightly in the sky. That, coupled with my natural night vision, meant that I could see very well in the dark. So as I saw my pride appearing on the horizon, one figure caught my attention. She couldn't have been a member of my pride, she was too small. I paused. My nose twitched as I took in the scent in the air. There were new scents in the air but none were unfamiliar. I knew that smell. Zuri. I ran immediately. My heart was beating so wildly in my chest that I could barely hear anything else. And when I finally touched the lioness I love most in the world, my heart fell to the pits of my stomach. It felt wrong to admit it, but when I reunited with her, there was no joy in my heart. My love did not give me butterflies in my stomach, nor did it stir my heart with happiness or joy. Instead, my love killed my heart. Zuri, I called her as she collapsed onto my frame. She was so weak, she was so thin, so small. I didn't even have the courage to hug her back, fearing my stupid strength would break her. My Zuri, I said, love turned into pity. I was not proud of myself for returning, rather, I was sorry and ashamed. I knew the situation would be bad, but nothing could prepare me for the state I found her in. I came back for you. Sorry I made you wait for so long, I said, my most sincere apology. Why didn't I come back earlier? I should have brought her with me when she asked. I should have never left the kingdom. I shouldn't have left her under Scar. Everything I had done so far had logical reasons behind it, but in my emotional state, I hated myself for all the decisions I made. Because all those led here. Zuri, the most important person in my life, was barely hanging on to life, just as she barely hung on to me. Why did you come back? She asked me, her voice small and parched. For you. I came back for you. Everything has been because of you. Even my hatred towards Scar, Even my desire to take back the Pride Lands, although it was a wasteland, all of it was because of you. Indeed, she was the queen of my life. And I told her that. I came back because I love you, I said. Who would have thought a wild animal like me would be capable of love? But I did. I love her so dearly it hurts. After I said that, she finally went limp. I caught her before she fell and gently laid her on the ground. Worry immediately filled my heart, thinking she had died of hunger and exhaustion. But luckily, the soft rhythm of her breath washed all those away. I looked at her while she slept. I really looked at her with everything I have. The contrast between us was like heaven and earth. While I had thrived and grown to an unimaginable degree, she had thinned and become frail. Looking at her current frame, I could barely recall what she looked like when I last saw her. I couldn't hold back my emotions, so I released them in the form of sound. I roared loudly towards the sky. It was an earth-shattering roar, but there was no heat, no intensity. It sounded like a mourning cry more than anything. And after that came rage. It was much more intense than the anger I felt when crocodiles killed my cub. It was the same anger I felt when I saw Scar trying to assault her in the den. I never forgot my hatred since then, but it seemed my anger had been forgotten. But that rage was reawakened at the sight of her fragile body. I didn't roar anymore. I didn't make a sound. When I looked back down, the members of my pride flinched back. They had never seen me so angry before. I gave one last nudge at Zuri and bid her good night. I walked deeper into the pride and also saw my mother there. The sight was similar to Zuri. My mother, a proud lioness when I last saw her, was now aged beyond just 2 years. She was sleeping peacefully, her body desperately needing rest. When I got closer, I saw wounds on her body. I knew immediately they were not wounds from a hyena but from a fellow lion. Hundreds of battles had taught me to recognize the work of a lion. And those marks were made by a lion, Scar. The sight only fueled my rage. Take good care of them, I said, and walked away from the pride with an even step. No one said anything. No one questioned me as I left. They gave a nod and began arranging themselves around Zuri and Sarabi. They were put at the center of the pride, being more protected than even cubs. Scar's pride members are around here. Kill them if they come close, I told Zale, who simply bobbed his head with cautious eyes. And I left the pride in the middle of the night. Third POV, Zuri had the most peaceful and relaxing sleep she had had in years. How could she not, when his warmth was literally the last thing she felt, and his scent the last conscious breath she took? But the sleep was shorter than she would have liked. She fell asleep after midnight but woke up early in the morning. Her body needed at least 1 whole day of sleep, but the commotion around her stirred her predator instinct. She couldn't sleep through all that. When she opened her eyes, the sun's rays were on her face. She squinted her eyes and slowly pushed off the ground. She looked around, strangely not finding anyone around her. The other lionesses were not there, nor were Nala or Sarabi. Her eyes searched for him, but he was nowhere to be found. The only thing she saw was the giant tree under which she lay and the empty plain around her. But there was noise and commotion, so there must be a source. She rubbed her eyes with her paws and finally opened her eyes fully. That was when she realized that everyone in the pride was a few meters away. They were all standing and facing one direction. She only saw their backs, but she knew they were looking at something. It was not hard to find Sarabi among the 30 or so lions. She was the smallest and skinniest among them. So Zuri made her way towards her with easy steps. "What's going on?" she asked when she came behind Sarabi. Nala was standing right beside her as well, Zuri noticed. But no one answered her question. And yet her question was answered all the same when she looked forward. She froze, breath halted, heart halted. When she reunited with him the night before, it was dark and she could barely see him. The only thing she knew was that he had grown much bigger. But now, under the bright morning sun, she could witness him in all that he had become. And what a lion he became. He came towards the pride at a pace most would consider slow, but considering the state he was in, it was impressive that he moved at all. He strode with the dignity everyone expected from a king. His whole body was covered in blood, but the eyes and the dark mane never lost their color to the red. His jaw held the neck of an animal the lions did not know was prey until this moment. The animal must have been twice, no, easily triple his size. And yet it was the carcass that he was dragging behind him. Indeed. Her first impression of Leo after so long was of him dragging a dead giraffe towards the pride. Their gaze met, and she did not need to be told to know that this meal was all for her. First POV, my body ached all over, and that was an understatement. But considering I just brought down a bull giraffe, I would say I got off easy. There might be a few broken ribs in my chest. If not, they are definitely fractured. I had to tank one of his neck swings to get close to him. I didn't get hit with his head, so I didn't endure the full force, but it was still devastating. But the injury was the last of my concern. My main source of agony came from my muscles, which had been worked and strained to drag the giraffe from the kill site to the pride. It had been a long time since I trained myself. I had been slacking off for weeks, as I could not train while traveling. So it was much needed work for my body and mind. That was one of the reasons why I set out to hunt this beast in the first place. It was not the time to slack and bask in the joy of reunion anymore. It was time to get ready for war again. My mindset was dialed back when I prepared to take down the Mbali brothers. But unlike that battle, this one was deeply personal. I hope there is someone out there praying for the creatures on that plateau. The giraffe weighed more than 1,000 kilograms, so I had to find a way to reduce its weight to carry it over a long distance. I ate parts of the organs and pulled out all the inedible insides, such as the blood and the intestines. I also bit off all the legs on the giraffe. The legs were just giant bones with minimal meat, so I threw them away to reduce the weight of the carcass. With all that unnecessary weight off, I was able to bring the carcass back to the pride. The distance was long, and it was no easy task. But I pulled it off all the same. I felt like a strong man dragging an airplane doing it. When I reached the pride, they were all standing and watching me. They greeted me with a bow that was a tad more respectful than on any other day. No one spoke as I threw the carcass on the side and took in rapid breaths. No one moved except one lioness. My mother was the first to come forward. Her eyes were wide, desperately trying to see what was in front of her. She saw me clearly, but it was like she wanted to see me more. She wanted to see me clearer. No matter how hungry she may be, the carcass did not even get a fraction of attention. She was only focused on me. "Mother," I said. The word felt foreign in my mouth after so long. My posture, which was straightened by dignity, bent when my mother came close. Whatever I had become, whatever I had achieved, I knew she was my beginning. "Leo," she said, her voice a tremble. "My cub, Leo. My son." She stood right in front of me, and you could see how small she was now compared to me. It would boggle anyone's mind how I came out of her. Under the gaze of everyone, mother and son looked at each other after a year apart. She released a shaky breath. Her eyes moved away from mine, and she began observing all of me. My gaze, on the other hand, was always on her as she walked around and inspected every inch of my body. After doing a complete circle around me, her eyes looked at mine again. "You've changed a lot," she said. She didn't say I had grown, and that subtle replacement of the word said a lot. Indeed, I did not just grow. I changed from a young cub whom she thought was doomed due to a disability to a lion king that was surpassed by none. "A lot has changed me," I replied with a nod of my head. And then there was pity in her eyes. Only a mother could still have pity for a 400 kilograms beast of a lion. She did not know the details, but she could imagine that I went through a lot to get to where I am now. She slammed her head on my chest, and I returned the hug wholeheartedly. I closed my eyes so that I could stop seeing all that had changed and only remember her warmth that was unchanged. I recalled the time of my infancy when I would desperately cling to her warmth. She was the only source of life I had back then. Her warmth, her milk, and her love. Those were the only welcomes I had in this world after I died as a human. "Your father would have been proud," she said. "Just like I am now." From my human perspective, she was not the best of mothers. She stopped caring for me after I lost my tail, thinking I had no future. She betrayed me when Scar became king, favoring traditions instead of the son she gave birth to. But that was just how things work in this world. And as a beast, it would be rare to find a mother like her. I knew I was lucky to have her. For a few minutes, we basked in each other's presence. Animals were not ones to say too much, so we talked through the language of our body. We had been separated for so long, and yet we had so little time to make it all up. After we had our reunion, my eyes opened, and they automatically found the thin lioness between all the others in the pride. She was already looking at me, so our eyes met. I gave her a pained smile. Pain because there were so many emotions conveyed with that smile. Happiness, guilt, relief, shame, pride, apology, and everything in between. My mother saw my attention had gone to someone else, so she rubbed along my length and moved away from between me and Zuri. For her, I walked forward. She mirrored my action and came forward as well. We met in a hug right in the middle. She was the only one who gave me a love that was perfect from both my perspectives, be it human or animal. I noticed that the other lionesses of my pride, even Nala, were giving us an intense look as we showed each other affection. It was understandable when I hugged my birth mother like so, but to be so affectionate with another female came with some implications when you were king. I knew that it was unfair to my pride, but Zuri was automatically the queen since I loved her. There might be some issues or jealousy later on, but I pushed that can of worms into the future. I will deal with such drama after all this. Right now, I just wanted to embrace her. Did you sleep well? I asked while spoiling her with licks on her head. The best I've had in a long time, she said. She looked up at me between my mane. But you left. Yes, I went to hunt for you, I said and gestured towards the long carcass of a giraffe. Even dead, the animal was a sight to behold. I knew you would be hungry. She did not reply, but the intense look she gave towards the food answered my question. She was absolutely starving. But when she spoke again, she spoke not of her hunger but of concern. You took that down alone? Are you injured? She then pulled back and examined my body thoroughly. She wouldn't find anything. I did not have a scratch on the surface. Most of my injuries were beneath my skin. The giraffe attacked with brute force, after all, not with sharpness or cuts. I'm fine. I'm built of steadier stuff, I said and nudged her on the head. I can see that. You must have gotten really strong then. When she said that, the answer came with pride and instinct. The strongest. I said. She gave me a look and then smiled. It was a funny smile with layers. It was a smile that said she knew that already. You realize that just now? I knew that from the beginning. Her eyes seemed to say. Indeed, I had always been the best in her eyes. Before the world knew it, she knew. Can we? She finally said after making sure I was okay. I nodded and led her towards the kill. I also gestured towards my mother to follow me, and so she did. I made them both stay at the belly of the giraffe. I had already torn open the tough skin, so the juicy organs were all there, ripe for the taking. They released low growls, their bodies responding to the smell. But neither tried to eat as they waited for me to do so first. I've eaten my fill already, I said. I ate as much as I could already to reduce the weight of the carcass. The organs were still left because the giraffe had large organs. The food is all yours, I said. They both turned to me, surprise coloring their eyes still. I did the same to Nala, and she gave me the same reaction back then. Living under the rule of Scar all this time had made them unable to imagine a lion doing such things. Come on, eat, I urged them again. We will talk after you fill your bellies, I said, and this time, they did so gladly. The both of them crouched down and began tearing into the meat like the carnivores they were. I looked at them with a smile before moving away. It was better to give them space while they ate. I walked forward and addressed the rest of the pride. They need food the most, so let them have their fill first, and then you can take your turns. I made sure there was enough for everyone, I said. In the meantime, let's talk about war, I said, and the best hunters in Nala responded to my words immediately. I walked through the pride and past them. When I turned my back on everyone, I allowed the buried rage to surface on my visage. Even after all the violence I unleashed at the giraffe, I could barely calm down. I bared my teeth. I want to get this over with quickly. It literally hurt my ego every second that Scar drew breath. Third POV, Pride Rock. While Leo had his reunion and the rest of his pride was feasting on a giraffe, things did not look as good in the Pridelands. Everything was in chaos. Even the rise of the sun did not put an end to the dark turmoil growing in the kingdom. And in the midst of all this chaos stood the king, Scar. Unlike Zuri, who finally got a peaceful rest, Scar had not slept even a wink. Where their nightmares ended, his began. Leo, his greatest threat, was back. And this time, he was no longer the green lion in his pride. Leo came back a king with the force of a full pride behind him. But Scar was also prepared. At least, that's what he told himself every passing minute. What? He stopped moving around inside the cave and asked sharply. Every member of his pride had returned. Their first instinct after hearing Leo's roar was to retreat and run back to their king. Well, almost all of them. Because there was one among the pride who actually confronted Leo instead of running back to the king. And right now, she was sprawled before Scar like a used rag. It's true, my lord. I met the betrayer. The stump of a tail he had as a cub was still there. There is no mistaking him, the lioness said, out of breath and hurried. She had been the last to return to the king because Leo had trapped her until the whole rescue operation was complete. She only reached Pride Rock by sunrise. And you came all the way back just to report that to me? Why did you not come back after killing that false king? He asked. I tried, my lord. I really did. I attacked him from behind, but he managed to suppress me before I could do anything, she said fast. You attacked him from behind and yet inflicted no injury, he said, his voice angry. He walked close to the female and put his face near hers. Tell me, did you lie to me, or are you actually that worthless? He asked, using himself to compare the full-grown Leo. In his mind, there was no way he himself could come out unscathed after being sneak-attacked by a lioness. So naturally, he thought Leo would be the same. Or maybe he did know the truth deep down but was denying it with everything he had. You expect too much from them, my king, Zira, somewhat queen of the pride, said while lying down on a rock. Scar turned his head slightly to look at his queen behind him before focusing back on the lioness. Is she right? Do I really expect too much from you? Scar asked again. The gaze of the king was too much for her. She broke into a panic. No, 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 no. It was not my fault. He is just too strong. He was 3 times bigger than me. What was I supposed to accomplish with such a difference between us? She said in a crying tone. That caught the attention of every lion inside the cave. Scar tilted his head. 3 times your size. For reference, Scar was much bigger than the lioness. He was extremely large for a grown lion. But even he was not twice the size of a lioness. So how could Leo be 3 times her size? Yes. He was ginormous. He was a lion the size of a buffalo, she said. Impossible, Scar scoffed. But deep down, considering Leo's size at a young age, he knew that it was very possible. His sharp mind became his greatest enemy in that moment. I tell the truth, my lord. Only the truth, she said, pleading. Scar gazed at her for a long time before suddenly turning. He walked away with weight in his steps. The whole pride watched their king as he processed the information. Whether it was true or an exaggeration, it was concerning all the same. A lion that was 3 times the size of a lioness or big enough to be mistaken as 3 times the size was a very large beast and a larger threat. His size and strength don't matter. I have an army behind me that he doesn't have, he said, telling himself as much as he was telling his pride. The hyenas want me as their king. Me. No one else, he said. We won't even have to fight, they will kill our enemies for us. And then a laugh. The sound came from no lion. It came from outside. It came from a hyena. 3 hyenas walked into the den as if on cue. The lions inside immediately growled and bared their teeth. Even Zira, who was lying casually, became alert and stood in her place. A fanatic for Scar she may be, but she never trusted the hyenas. Do not be rude to them, welcome them, Scar said, effectively stopping the lions from doing anything as the hyenas invaded their most sacred home. The laugh became even worse. The 3 hyenas were looking around, smugly eyeing every lioness they passed. They stopped only when they stood before the king. They bowed out of respect, or at least a show of fake respect. The 3 hyenas were all females, and they were the 3 most dominant in all the horde. They were effectively the leaders because of that. They were Gracia, Vurok, and Dreka, respectively. What do you 3 think of the situation? Scar asked when they stopped before him. You are absolutely right, King Scar. No lion can match our sheer number, Gracia said with a grin. The hidden meaning did not go unnoticed by anyone, even Scar, but he chose to ignore it. Scar looked around at his pride. You heard what she said, everyone. Leo and his gang of outcasts will not be a problem to us. We have worthy allies after all, Scar said to the comfort of absolutely no one. What a buttload of crap indeed. If Leo and the other lions were termed outcasts, what would the hyenas be? Aliens? Not only that, we also have information about your enemy, King Scar, Vurok said. Oh. Scar raised an eyebrow. And where did you attain such information? Some hyenas among our numbers came from the Serengeti, she explained. The Serengeti is the same place where Leo ran off to when you kicked him out of the Pride. With their knowledge, we now know about his pride and the threat he posed to us. He is nothing but a brute, strength with no brain, that chased hyenas out from his territory instead of seeing our important role in the ecosystem, she said. Is that true? Did he really chase the hyenas out of his territory? Scar asked, to which they nodded. And what are the feelings of these hyenas that faced his cruelty before? They were scared at first, but with our help, they overcame their fear and now want revenge, Dreka said, bloodlust in her tone. And they will have their revenge, Scar said with a nod. He straightened his posture and declared with a tone somewhat worthy of a king, gather the hyenas. Every last one of them from all across the kingdom. Tell them to prepare for war. The hyenas cackled. As you wish, they said before leaving the den to do as commanded. After the 3 hyenas left, every eye turned toward Scar. Their eyes showed that they did not exactly approve of the hyenas, but no one dared to say anything. But among them, Zira was different. She confronted the king. My lord, are you sure it is wise to get this close to the hyenas? To let them inside our den is. Zira began but was shut down sharply. I know what I'm doing, Zira, Scar said with a bite. He took a deep breath to calm his temper. Then he explained to her, regardless of what I say and do, I do not consider the hyenas to be allies. At least not anymore. They have grown too much for even my control, he admitted. He was talking to Zira, but the whole pride listened. But Leo and his pride give me a great opportunity to fix my mistake. We will take neither side in this fight, and we will let them kill each other. In the end, we will finish those that remain in the aftermath, no matter the victor, he said. We will become the sole rulers of the Pridelands once more, said the sickening lion without honor. Betrayal was in his blood. A scum even below hyenas. Leo wanted war. Scar wanted to win at all costs. Third POV, the researchers, holy shit, they came out again. Ramirez said while looking at the big screen in front of him. He was controlling a drone with both hands while he looked at the screen connected to the drone's camera. He was sitting in the passenger seat of the vehicle, and the whole crew was sitting beside and behind him. They too were all staring at the video playing on the screen. They were left completely speechless as they watched 3 hyenas enter a lion's den and leave afterwards with no scratch on them. Does this mean Hannah's hypothesis is actually true? Do the lions really have some type of symbiotic relation with the hyenas? Malik asked while turning to the researchers, whom he thought were more knowledgeable than him. I'm afraid so, but this is completely ridiculous. This is even more ridiculous than Leo's relation with the vultures. Hyenas and lions are enemies. They are biologically designed to compete with each other, to be rivals. How are they doing this? Dr. Thompson said, his voice completely done. And who could blame him? He had seen some weird shit this past month. Starting from how Leo was acting like a long-lost lover with a random female and all the way to them leaving their kingdom and coming here to a wasteland that no one had even heard of. Of course, my hypothesis was correct, Hannah said smugly. The main question is why they are doing this. What do they benefit from working with each other? Is it because of the horrible condition of their land? Is this a partnership that came from necessity? To answer that question, we will have to learn more about this land. Why have we never heard of this part of the region before? And how can 2 predators sustain themselves on that plateau with virtually no prey? Dr. Thompson said. So many questions, I feel a headache. Ramirez said while rubbing his head, and the other team reported that Leo took down a giraffe by himself as well. It's getting cliché at this point. I'm always expecting a surprise from him, so I'm not surprised, Hannah said. What I am surprised about is whatever the hell is going on with this drama. It's like we are in the middle of an elaborate plot point in a story to which we have no context, Ramarex joked, but he couldn't have been closer to the truth. What is the relationship Leo had with his place anyway? Do you really think this was his original home? Yes, but this straight up contradicts our initial hypothesis that Leo came from a thriving land where he could eat and grow to the limit during his cubhood, Hannah said with a sigh. The more we learn, the more we are confused. Truly a science moment, Dr. Thompson said with a laugh. The researchers continued watching the story unfold, not knowing what part they played in the story and not even knowing the event that was going on around them. They were the most confused audience in cinema history. Can't you get a better shot of the den? Hannah asked. Nope. I am at the limit of rage. Further than this and I won't be able to control the drone, Ramirez answered. Should we go to the plateau? She considered. Hell no. I'm not going anywhere near that hungry hyena-infested land. I will stay in the safety of Leo's aura. Thank you very much, he replied quickly. As a known hater of hyenas, they had faith in Leo for their protection. Curse words had increased tenfold during the recent weeks as well. My father once told me that animals are as sentient as humans, with their own mind, story, and soul. Maybe we should stop looking at this through the eyes of researchers and just observe and try to make the most sense, Dr. Thompson said after a long, winding discussion. Whatever the case, and however they may complain, each and every member of the crew was stoked to find the truth. And tell the whole world what happened and will happen here. First POV, first and foremost, we were going to win this war one way or another. Let's get that fact right out of the way. The only problem I had now was at what cost. Would I win this war? It was effortless to win a war, but to do so without losing anything was outright impossible. And I happened to be a king who was not willing to pay the price of victory. I wanted to win, but I wanted to do so in a manner that would cost no life. If even one lion lost their life in this battle, I would personally consider that a loss. Now, to do so, I had to come up with a remarkable plan. The short discussion I had with the veteran lionesses bore no fruit. In the end, they all went to eat the giraffe I had hunted down without reaching any conclusion. I was kind of frustrated because of that, but there was not much I could do. I shouldn't expect much from them. I was the one with a past life as a human. I should be the one coming up with plans. In the meantime, I told Grimm and the other vultures to study the enemies more carefully. I wanted to know everything that was going on in the Pride Lands. I wanted to know the relation between them. I wanted to know how Scar was managing such a huge number of hyenas. I wanted to know where they were stationed. I needed to know everything. Zuri came up to me after the rest had left to eat. By the time the rest of the Pride started their meal, she was already done. You seem to have a lot in mind, she said when she reached me. I broke out of my thoughts and greeted her with a smile. My body language changed as I opened myself to welcome her with not a hint of rejection. Yes, I do, I said when our bodies made contact. Am I disturbing you? She asked. Absolutely not, I said and put a nail to every other thought. Those could wait for later. I kind of wished that she were the one to find me instead of Nala. My guilt only increased when I thought about our untimely reunion, which was right before the conflict. In my mind, I always thought we would reunite after I'd done everything and taken back the Pride Lands from Scar and his hyenas. But different from what I expected, I had to do the whole rescue mission instead. You don't have to be so eager, you know, she said, her voice having a smile. I feel like you are trying too hard to give me attention. I am here by your side now, and I'm planning to stay here forever. We don't need to rush. How she knew that, I don't know. Maybe she had exceptional emotional intelligence for a lion. I know it because you told me, she said, and this time with an actual laugh. God, you have the most expressive pair of eyes in the world. I blinked. I do. Yes, she said. I think it's your way of making up for something you lack. She was talking about my tail. The tail is one of the most important parts of communication for a lion. Although we could talk, animals communicate most with body language, not words. I shook my head and changed the topic. You've had your fill? The answer was obvious, but she nodded all the same. Yes, it's the first time I've had giraffe. Their taste is just incredible. I gave a smile. They were indeed delicious, but not really exquisite. There were better meats out there. Wait till you try a Cape buffalo. She paused. Buffalo. Yes, it's our main source of food back in the Serengeti, I said. And they are quite different from the ones in the Pride Land. You hunt buffalo regularly, she said, surprised. But then she thought about it for a little while and came to her own conclusion. Sorry, that was a stupid question. With the size of the Pride under you, it might not be impossible to have buffalo in every meal. You also need prey that size to feed everyone. She looked back at my Pride that was feeding on the giraffe. Just looking at the meat, you would think they were as starved as Zuri when, in actuality, it had only been 4 days or so since our last meal. On the other hand, my eyes never moved. My smile turned a little smaller as I thought about how much she did not know about me. It had been so long, it would take us a while to know each other as well as we used to. Actually, I used to hunt buffalo alone when I was a rogue, I said, and that snapped her head back at me. Seriously. I was a little confused about how that was surprising when she knew I took down a giraffe alone. But I guess she also underestimated a giraffe just like I used to, since it was all neck and, in theory, was full of vulnerable spots. There are so many things I want to tell you, I said, my voice sounding needier than I expected. I sighed. Zuri only chuckled and rubbed her head on my lower jaw. I told you before, no need to rush. We can tell each other everything we want to say. We have our whole lives, right? I stayed silent for a while before agreeing with her. You're right. I'll never let you go again. Her smile widened. Even if you wanted to, I added. She laughed. The same goes for me. I will continue following you even if you want me gone, she said. It was my time to laugh, remembering how I told her not to follow me when I was kicked out of the Pride. So, what were you thinking before I came and disturbed you? She asked after I stopped laughing. You did not disturb me, I repeated. I was just thinking of strategies I could use to finish this war with the least amount of casualties. I can help you with that, she said. Really? Yeah, she nodded. When you live for so long with the animals you hate, you naturally begin contemplating the best and most effective ways to kill them. I hummed. What do you have in mind? Her smile turned into a grin. Surprise, surprise, the sweetest cats often have the evilest ideas. Zuri was completely right when she said she could help with the planning. It seemed I only needed a person with whom I could bounce off ideas to get some innovative ideas. Zuri and I found those talks to be oddly boring as well. It was not sharing each other's stories or talking about personal feelings, but it brought us closer again. When the other lionesses came to join the discussion, the plan got even more refined. We were clearly at a disadvantage, so the main core of the strategy was to hide behind the safety of hit-and-run tactics. We were smaller in number. We were less than 25 fighting lions, so meeting 400 hyenas in a straightforward battle was not a wise decision. There was bound to be a loss of life if we did that, and we couldn't afford that. But our smaller number also meant that we could move faster and coordinate better. With the help of the vultures in the sky, we would be virtually impossible to deal with for the uncoordinated hyenas that did not even have a solid leader. We needed to play to our strength and exploit their weakness to the limit. But that also included not starting the conflict as soon as possible. They were in a wasteland, stuck on a plateau. They didn't have proper access to food or water, and we wanted them to suffer those consequences for as long as possible. The Pride moved towards the main escape route of the Pride Lands, and we camped there. In another attempt to harass them, I gave the vultures the same task I had given them before my battle with the Mbali brothers. Make sure none of our enemies got food to eat in the rare case that they found an opportunity. 3 days quickly passed as we waited patiently for the enemies to get weaker. During this time, the huge meal that we had from the giraffe was also digested. We were in the perfect state, where we were not hungry and there was no undigested food in our system. It was also enough time for me to recover from the wounds I got from the giraffe. My higher testosterone meant that I could recover rather quickly, so I would be in perfect condition by tomorrow. The plan was to sneak into the Pride Lands tomorrow and finally start the battle. There were a ton of things that we were planning to do to cut down the number of hyenas. Nala and Zuri were very familiar with the whole kingdom's geography, so we also planned to use that as an advantage. For example, some lions would lead the hyenas into the gorge. The same gorge in which Mufasa died. We could then set up an ambush in that tight space. The place would make sure that no matter how many hyenas there were, they would only be able to come at us in controlled numbers. There was also the option of some lionesses staying at the top and throwing down rocks to crush the hyenas. And that was only some of the ways we were trying to use the land to our advantage. It was the third day since we rescued Zuri and Sarabi. Since we were planning on finally stepping into the Pridelands tomorrow, I told everyone to get a good rest and conserve their energy. I lay at the center of the Pride, surrounded by many females, but most of my focus was on Nala and Zuri, who were on either side of my body. I could feel their warmth as they lay around, cuddling with me. And yet I could not find it in me to relax. Maybe it was the anticipation, or maybe it was my instinct screaming at the wrong thing. But something seemed off. My eyes scanned the surroundings carefully. I lifted my nose in the air, taking in the scents. I also used my other senses to get a feel of the world. I couldn't find anything. And then I looked up. I noticed at once the unnatural behavior of the vultures flying in the sky. It was not long before I saw Grim flying towards me in a hurried manner. Vultures had long wingspans and barely needed to flap when they flew. But Grim was rapidly flapping his wings to fly as fast as he could towards me. I stood up immediately. My actions roused everyone in the Pride, but I didn't care about that. I stepped between the bodies and ran out of the Pride to greet my subject as soon as possible. Grim did not slow down even when he was close to the ground. He did not land. Instead, he crashed into my body with full force. I tried my best to give him a soft landing, and that helped immensely as he was unharmed. Grim, what is going on? I asked. The vulture quickly got up from the ground. He did not take time to smooth his messed up feathers, and he said, "It's the hyenas, my lord." I narrowed my eyes. "They are coming," he said, and took in a deep breath. "All of them." I paused. There was no panic on my visage as I simply stared towards the plateau. If Grim reported this as quickly as he appeared to, we still had time to react. It was not an ambush or anything like that. But that didn't make the information less devastating. What was the saying again? No plan survives first contact. In my rage and anticipation, I had planned different ways in which I could attack and approach this war. But did I ever pause and consider what if they attacked us instead? I did. But this was much worse than if we had been the ones to attack. Well, I would like to say this caught me off guard, but not really. I may laugh at Scar as a king, but I always regarded his cunning highly. Well played. So it starts. A day earlier than expected, I said. And then, roar. I declared the start of the war. First POV, it makes little sense why they decided to attack us first. The only reason they would do such things was if we had starved them enough to a point that they had no choice but to come down and hunt outside. But I made sure to avoid that, deciding to cut off their sustenance for only 4 days, barely enough to weaken them, whereas I had harassed them Bali brothers for 2 weeks straight. I thought they would be playing the defensive and we the offense. Scar was definitely the type of person to summon all the hyenas outside the Pride Rock and hide in the safety of their numbers. Another reason why a straightforward attack like this did not work was that we could just run away in theory. We could just disperse and attack them again after they give up and return to the Pridelands. Or, if they scattered, we could just mow down their number one at a time. It would be the same strategy we would use, just on the outside world and not the soil of the Pridelands. I was not sure what was going through Scar's head. It definitely decreased our options and negated all our plans, but that didn't mean he was going to win. You could prohibit kicks, elbows, headbutts, etc. in a fight, but I could still always beat you up with straight hands. Cutting our options did not equate to his victory. But I will admit, this was the most annoying outcome. If I were to decide how things proceed, this would be my last option. And maybe that was the whole point of it. The best defense is offense. The whole Pride responded to my single roar as they roused from their sleep. They discarded whatever they did and began lining up behind me. "The hyenas are attacking us," I said to my Pride. They perked up at the news, some even grinding their teeth at the unexpected development. It was clear that this was not how things were supposed to go in our minds. But worry not, the situation is not beyond saving. We can actually turn this around and make it advantageous for us instead, I said. Since Grim reported as soon as possible, we still had ample time to decide on the plan and react to the attack. It was one of the great benefits of having birds to serve you. "So what's the plan, my lord?" Esh asked me, her tone dead serious and her eyes looking at me for answers. If they don't want to play defensively, we will not either. We will meet them head-on and use this opportunity to reduce their number as much as possible. They came searching for death, and they will find theirs, I said. The plan was already forming in my mind. It was not some kind of elaborate plan, but it was enough to accomplish the main objective. That is to reduce their number while maintaining the safety of my pride. But what about all our other plans? Zuri asked me while stepping forward. Those will find use later. We are not finishing this war in just one battle, I said. It was one of the most important factors of this war that we always kept in mind. They had the number advantage, and if we were forced into a head-on fight until the bitter end, we could lose. We will head up to the Pride Lands and meet them there. Just follow my instructions for now, I said. There was still a lot of time left, but not enough to discuss anything. We need to move as soon as possible. And so, I led the Pride up the path. The so-called escape route of the Pride Lands was a drop in terrain. It was a tight gorge with barely any light because the land above was connected again. It was a narrow, winding path like the body of a snake. The path was likely made by erosion. I believe a river used to run here before the river changed its course to somewhere else over the years. So we walked up that path and came out to the elevated land, which was the Pride Lands. There was no one at the entrance of the route. We expected this because the vultures reported that all hyenas had gathered in one place days ago. After I entered the Pride Lands, the rest of my pride followed one by one. We did not move far away from the entrance. Instead, I decided to camp there. The hyenas would definitely try to come through here to get out of the Pride Lands, and that's where they will meet us. And just to be sure they know to come towards us, I released a roar. Roar. The roar was particularly loud. It did not have the violence or the intensity of my usual roars because the aim was not to ward off enemies but to summon them. Come here. Come to me. The sound echoed through the wasteland, revealing my location to everyone with ears. It was late morning and the sun was high in the sky. I would have preferred a night battle, but at this point, I did not have the privilege to choose. The cubs and the juveniles can go back and stay in the gorge. Be ready to run when I say so, I said after everyone came up the Pride Lands. The older juveniles were quick to follow my command, and they led the younger ones back into the path. We had 7 lions too young to fight, and the best they could do was stay safe so that the adults could fight with no worry or concern for safety except theirs. So, what's next? Nala came by my side and asked. We wait, I said, my nose twitched lightly, and I added with a snarl, I can already smell the horde. We all stood near the entrance of the escape path. I made sure that we were standing around it so that the pride could retreat at a moment's notice. After less than 5 minutes of waiting, we could see the hyenas running towards us on the horizon. The sight was quite the baffling scene. It was like looking at a herd of zebras or wildebeest from a distance, but instead of prey, they were bloodthirsty scavengers. Remember, we take down as many as we can and then we retreat back to safety. We will meet them head-on in battle but not in attrition, I said, and the pride growled in acknowledgement. I began roaring. It was not a roar meant to challenge or ward off. Instead, the roars were like constant thunder rumbling off my chest like a war drum. I did not put in much effort. I released sound in every exhalation, and that was the roar. The deep vibration rumbled, the low frequency capable of traveling through bones and shaking at the nerves of my enemy. But the clan of hyenas in such numbers was hard to scare off. I did notice that their speed fell off as I began my roar. The hyenas at the front slowed down so that others could be in the front lines instead. No one wanted to be the one to charge first. At this point, vultures flew in the sky. The blue sky did not appear bright at all, as it was filled by the heralds of death. Their caws and screams matched perfectly with my roars. Keep the exit right behind you, always, I said, giving my final advice. And then the flood of hyenas finally reached us. My repeated roars culminated and I bellowed one last roar. I was the first to shoot out like a cannon. The others in my pride, on the other hand, kept their position, obeying my command to always keep the exit close. But I was not included, so I was the first to charge. My sheer acceleration was devastating. I was rapidly gaining momentum as I ran. The hyenas came in like a flood. The center of the front lines was always poking out compared to the rest of the group. But as they saw me coming straight for that formation tanked. The wave at the center stopped. No matter the number, no matter the idiocy or the hunger, an apex predator charging straight at you lit up all instincts. Their body and mind were caught in a war. One wanted to fight, the other wanted to live. Suddenly, it seemed like I was the one attacking the horde and not the other way around. I was still many meters away from the hyenas when I decided to take a giant leap. The hyenas stopped completely at this point. They slid to a stop and looked up, just in time for my shadow to cast darkness upon them. And then, boom! All my weight and momentum allowed me to bulldoze through at least 5 hyenas. My body crushed their bones and snapped their legs the other way. A splash of blood erupted from the hyena I crashed on. And in less than a second, my paw found the face of a hyena. I tore off half his face, and the sheer force behind my blow created a small explosion that completely shut down his brain. My body went into fighting mode, and amid the sea of victims, I raged. Third POV. The Pride Lands was a kingdom only 1/4 the size of the Serengeti. But that much land was still humongous, having its own ecosystem almost completely separate from the outside world. The hyenas were scattered throughout every corner of the kingdom, which was why it took 3 days to gather every hyena in the land. Hyenas could not roar, so to gather their forces, they had to send out messengers who had to visit every region of the kingdom. And when every hyena gathered in one place, there were more of them than anyone would expect. The number of full-grown hyenas alone surpassed 400. Their gathering alone covered a football field's worth of land. That was how gigantic their number was. This was a never-before-seen event. A non-herd animal gathering in such numbers seemed almost apocalyptical to the researchers who observed them. After the gathering was done and all hyenas had been summoned in one place, they began their attack without having to be told anything. Even though Scar did not lead the army, their sheer number bred chaos that was uncontrollable to any entity on the earth. Together, they were a natural disaster rather than an animal. An untamed force that would devour anything, driven only by hunger and instinct. They moved in waves, their horde looking like a black tsunami from afar. They knew exactly where to go without being told. They headed towards the main escape path of the Pride Lands, the same path that the lions took in their rescue mission. The horde moved as one. Clusters of hyenas surged in heaving packs, filling gaps and sliding on the wasteland like dark water. The smell was horrendous, a decay and raw stench that could break a working nose with one sniff. They traveled for miles, but since their gathering point had been close to the escape path, they were able to reach there in just half an hour. They could see the lions making a stand at the entrance of the path. How utterly stupid, they thought to themselves. Their mouths watered at the thought of having lions meet tonight. The lions were basically handing themselves on a silver platter. In such a number, the hyenas did not fear anything in the world. That was until fear was put back into their heart. Leo came forward, the hyenas saw his chest expand, and then a drum of sound was released. The chain of deep roars that came was like a chain of lightning. It set their ears ringing and their bellies quivering. Closer now, the details finally struck them. His size was that of 2 lions combined. His mane was not wild hair like Scar's. It was the same color of black, but he wore it like a crown. His eyes did not quiver in the might of their quantity, but they intensified, looking like a furnace, yet they felt a chill run down their spine. And then he launched towards them. What the actual hell? Was the collective thought of everyone as they saw Leo charging at them by himself. They thought they were scary, they thought they were unstoppable, so why was this lion running towards them like a kid on Christmas? They saw no fear in him, only odd excitement that somehow terrified them more than anything should. The center of the front line collapsed immediately, not wanting to meet the crazy on legs. They still thought they would win, but no one wanted to pay the price of victory. No one wanted to fight him. But it was all too late. Leo ran faster than anyone could believe. It was not so much a run as it was gravity undone. He moved not with force but like force. He was running on a plane like he was running down a hill. Then the lion leapt into the air, and 3 unfortunate hyenas looked up, their world cast by a dark shadow, before everything went dark permanently. They didn't even realize they died as 400 kilograms of mass crushed everything they were made of. That was the first impact of the battle. The hyenas who were unharmed were still close enough to finally realize the sheer scale of what faced them. Was this even a lion? No, to them this was a monster clothed in a lion's skin. Leo did not stop upon impact. Instead, he continued plowing through the hyenas without losing momentum. The hyenas were much smaller than him, not even reaching his chest when standing straight. Leo folded them like he would grass. Their number. Their sheer number. But does it matter how many flies annoy you? Their mouths opened agape in sheer horror. Most tried to turn and run back, but the horde behind pushed them forward at the jaw of terror. Most didn't even want to look at what killed them. Fight. Fight back. Some hyenas roared, the braver souls. But they were only putting a target on their back. Leo knew how important morale was in a battle, so he made it a priority to kill them first. He wouldn't allow their fire to light up the others. The horde should continue to believe that they were in for a slaughter. Leo used his size advantage to the limit. He was not only biting or clawing them but also crushing them. He stood on his hind legs occasionally like a bear and then crushed 2 or 3 hyenas under his weight. One swing of his paw made 4 hyenas cry. A hyena got the right idea and attacked him at his legs. Leo growled before he bit down at the spine. He shoved the hyena on the ground, pinning him and tightening his hold. When his canines dug into muscle and then bone, the hyena struggled fiercely and screamed out in pain. Leo then snatched him up and flung him away. The body of the hyena flew like a rag, a testament to Leo's strength. The spectacle was nothing short of a nightmare for the hyenas. Leo did not fight them. He was dismantling them with the brutal efficiency of a predator. The hyenas in his vicinity died in an arc. One moment, there was the rough chorus of the horde, and then there was a hush of raw bodies collapsing. Death was silence, and silence was loud amid all the chaos. "You dare corrupt my home, vile creatures!" Leo roared out. The hyenas scattered in an instant, taking the chance to escape after a minute of unrelenting slaughter. Leo caught his breath as well. His own words seemed to enrage him even more. "You will repay everything you took with blood," he said, and then he moved again. His body was muscular and tight, so much so that the hyenas could barely get a hold of him with their jaws. It was akin to biting a rock. The most they could do was latch on his loose hide, tearing and cutting his skin. When Leo fought again, he no longer fought like a berserker. The initial battle was done both because of his uncontrolled rage and also to scare and lower the morale of the horde. But now, he fought with an economy of violence that was almost surgical. Using the term biting or clawing would give the impression of it being a fight, but that was wrong. The hyenas that met him did not exactly die. It was more like they had their existence unmade by a force that had no patience for half measures. It was unlike anything you'd ever seen. The hyenas were killed in the most unpredictable ways possible, be it having their necks stepped on and broken to being flung halfway across the battlefield with raw strength. But as the battle raged on, the hyenas showed why they were savage in their own right. Attack from the back. One hyena screamed out before having his jaw blown off by the violent swing of a paw. But the order caught on. Go from behind. Attack him from behind. The horde began swallowing Leo. The hyenas that were trembling with fear suddenly found courage at the prospect of attacking from behind. After all, even cowards could attack from behind. They circled Leo and began pushing him to the center of the horde. 2 hyenas jumped up and latched onto Leo's back. Their jaws tightly held the hide and they shook their heads violently in order to tear. Leo roared out loudly before standing on his hind legs and falling on his back, effectively crushing the hyenas. He quickly got up before the hyenas attacked his vulnerable underbelly. But Leo did not attack afterwards. Instead, he was defending and fighting back any hyena that got close. It was a much-needed turn of tide that the hyenas desperately prayed for. But as their focus turned solely on Leo, they forgot about the rest of his pride. The hyenas were too caught up in their frenzy of surrounding Leo to even notice the pride coming at them like a second storm. The surprise element made the attack even more effective than it should have been. Zale was the first to leap, imitating the king he respected and admired so much. He moved like lightning, his body sailing through the air before he landed on a hyena that had turned its back to join the assault on Leo. His claws dug deep into its back, his jaw locked at the back neck of the hyena. Zale twisted his head with practiced force, and with a snap of a bone, the hyena ceased to be. He was awfully similar in his efficient killing. Attacking right behind him were Nala and Zuri. The Queen of the Pride showed no hesitation either. Her hunger from days of suffering under Scar's rule had turned into an edge, and now it was sharpened into a blade that would bring death to the hyenas. She darted low and rammed her shoulder into a hyena's ribs. The creature yelped as the air left its lungs, only for Zuri to clamp down on its face and drag it to the ground. She tore until there was no more sound. Nala had always been a great fighter since birth. It was her gift. She slammed her head on a hyena, pushing the enemy on the ground. The hyena lay on its back, and that was when she attacked without hesitation. She tore at the open belly like second nature. Sarabi, though older and weakened, fought with the steadiness of a queen who once ruled over all. She did not waste her strength in blind rage but fought with experience. A hyena rushed at her flank, thinking that she was weak. But Sarabi pivoted, sidestepped, and slammed her paw across its muzzle so hard that the hyena released puppy sounds. Taking its dizziness as an advantage, Sarabi grabbed the hyena by the throat, her teeth crushing its windpipe. The hyena struggled, but it had no claws like them, so it brought nothing but satisfaction to her. The battle began to look less like a single lion raging amid a horde and more like a full-on war. For every lion, there were 20 hyenas, but the coordination of the pride was something the scavengers could not match. Soon enough, the pride managed to dig out their king from the horde and dragged him away from the center of the sea of hyenas. Their arrival brought him the moment he needed. So with renewed strength, Leo lunged forward, his claws raking across the face of a hyena. The face was violently ripped off. The force of the blow knocked him out cold. Leo's roar thundered out once more, shaking the battlefield with his presence. The pride responded to his call, stopping their violent attack to regroup with the king. "You all know what to do. Formation now." Leo called out, and the pride knew exactly what to do. During the 3 days, the pride had lots of time to plan out different scenarios. Although most of those plans did not see practical use, they still worked in the pride's favor. They had planned beforehand about what to do in case they ever met the hyenas on open ground. The lions began creating a formation. They did not cluster in a small group but spread out in a line. No lion stood behind the other so that everyone could have the surface area to fight at their utmost capacity. They stood shoulder to shoulder in a line. Leo was seated at the center, with the weaker members of the pride standing beside him. The stronger lionesses, on the other hand, were positioned at both ends of the line. "Don't let them circle you." Leo roared, and the battle commenced again. The lions moved back together in that line while attacking and fighting every incoming hyena. The horde swarmed them from the front, but the formation held on as the lions backed away in response to their push. When the hyenas tried to circle them and attack from behind, the line formation turned into a semicircle. The aim was to slow down the speed of the hyenas, putting them in the front and making them take a long time to circumnavigate behind the pride. This worked because the horde was huge and they covered a big area. It was not easy for them to mobilize swiftly. Due to their formation, the hyenas could not abuse their numbers like they should. They had the upper hand and were constantly pushing back the lions, but they were the ones getting damaged while the lions remained unharmed. The lionesses were not strong like Leo to one-shot any hyena, but their attacks still did enough damage to cripple the hyenas or put them out of the battle for the moment. Their formation was working well, but in the end, it could only slow down the inevitable. Soon enough, the horde found its way to circle the pride, at which point the line formation had also turned into a full circle where the pride covered each other from every angle of attack. But animals were not humans. They do not have the ability to sweat so much fluid to cool their body down. They had fur, and in a tight battle like now, the lions quickly got exhausted. Around 10 minutes, that was all the lions could fight at full power before they needed to rest. Lions were built for bursts of strength after all, not for prolonged battles. For a moment, it seemed the lions were done for. The hyenas began laughing as they successfully trapped the lions. The ones at the front lines were the hyenas that had not seen any battle. The ones who got injured or had grown tired retreated back into the horde. The ones at the front were all fresh hyenas, ready for blood. And in that seemingly dire moment, Leo spoke, "Fend them off for a minute." Leo retreated into the center of the circular formation. The lionesses quickly filled the gaps and gave their king a moment to catch his breath. The lionesses bared their teeth and swiped at any hyenas that tried to come close. At this point, they were quickly being dragged to the center of the horde with no way to escape. There was a short standstill. The vultures in the sky became relentless. They flew in chaotic freedom, already wanting to feast on all the corpses of the hyenas that littered the battlefield. Among the carrion, 3 drones were also present, capturing every moment of the battle. First POV, fighting 5 powerful enemies was vastly different from fighting 400 pests. The latter is much more exhausting and satisfying. I retreated to rest at the center of the circular formation that the pride had made. I took a moment to catch my breath, panting and wiping away all the blood that covered my body. The fresh blood of the hyenas was warm, and with their slick texture covering my whole body, it was messing with my body heat. It was making me tired faster than usual. That was an example of one of the many factors I did not consider while fighting them like this. Although I like to pretend, I was not all knowledgeable. I should have known this. I had known this ever since I fought Roku, and my stuffed belly was the only reason it ended in a draw. It was not just the strength of the enemy but the whole situation that was at play when you fight in nature. I guess life had reminded me of this lesson. I underestimated not the hyenas but the intensity that came with war. The hyenas continued circling us. They were getting bolder with each passing second. The only reason why they hesitated was because none of them wanted to be the first to poke the lionesses. They prowled with their heads dipped low, eyes glinting to search for any opening. Their open jaws were leaking drool that mixed with the blood on the ground. What a horrible sight they were to look at. All this time, we had been the ones fighting and instigating the conflict, but now it was their turn, and they were finding their tempo. The moment they found their momentum would spell doom for us. I saw one hyena attack Zuri. She stood out as a weak spot because she was smaller and thinner than the rest. The hyena lunged forward, but she managed to step back in time. There was the sound of jaws shutting with bone-crushing pressure, a hint at what would have happened if she had been even a second too late. Zuri countered fast, swinging her paw at the hyena before biting at the head and pushing him down. But the other hyenas used that chance to attack her. Using their fallen comrade as a stepping stone, two hyenas rushed at Zuri while she was occupied. I moved fast. Getting behind her, I met the two hyenas with a swing of my own. My paw did not hit cleanly, my claws barely raking them. But the thunderous force behind my swing was still enough to knock them out. You could hear the sound of my swing, like a baseball bat cutting through the air. I had swung harder than even I intended. One hyena was sent tumbling across the dirt. He rolled 3 times before he stopped and lay unconscious in front of the other hyenas. That would work to demotivate them for a little longer. The other hyena, on the other hand, went limp immediately. His body stiffened and he was out cold. Be careful, I told Zuri before pulling back. The hyenas tried the same tactic on different lions. They were trying to find a gap or at least create an opening in our formation. But when those attempts were too infrequent, the hyenas began pushing their own forward, forcing them to become sacrificial meat to get closer to the lionesses. None had honor. There was no mercy for the scavengers. On the other hand, the pride worked as a team. They worked together better than I could ever believe. Their coordination and the fact that they had each other's backs always kept them alive. But among them, Zale perhaps was the most remarkable. Even now, he roared and still insisted on shooting out in short bursts to kill the hyenas. He was ferocious, and that was why the hyenas in his vicinity were the furthest. Don't stay stationary. Move, I said when I saw how the horde closed up on some parts of the formation while staying away from the rest. Give Zale a chance to fend them off, I said, and the pride followed my command. They began rotating the formation. In this manner, Zale, the only other lion other than me, was able to cover the weaker lionesses like Zuri and Sarabi. But even that did not last long. Eventually, the horde broke through. Tala no. Nala screamed as a hyena found its mark on her neck. The moment one hyena caught the neck of Tala, 5 more sprang out with sharp teeth. She collapsed, instinctively protecting her vitals while the hyenas began mauling her. The lionesses behind her, even Nala, could no longer care about the formation as they ran to help her. The formation had a gap, and the horde began filling it like water rushing to cracks. But at that point, the pride had held on for nearly 2 minutes. That was enough for me to regain my intensity. I was ready for the final burst of power. Retreat. Go back to the path, I said, and that was followed by a roar so loud it momentarily froze every creature on the battlefield. It was the primal instinct in response to such a loud sound. And then I shot out. This time, I no longer pushed forward but back. I ran in the direction of the escape path from which we came. When I finally reached the horde, I did not bite or claw like I did. My aim was no longer to kill them. Boom. I dipped my head and then knocked the 2 hyenas standing in my way. They were thrown into the air as I ragdolled them in a way a buffalo would ragdoll me. "Follow me," I commanded once more as I proceeded to carve a road amid the horde of hyenas. I paved the path with the bodies of the hyenas. The pride was quick to follow me. They knew exactly what to do as they ran in a line on both sides. They took the chance to finish off every hyena that I ragdolled. I refused to slow down my momentum just for kills and slammed into the hyenas. I would swing my paw when they were standing in a cluster, trying to stop me. But no matter what they did, they found themselves on the dirt, and they were finished off by my pride that followed me. The hyenas became more ferocious and reckless when they realized I was not killing any of them and only slamming them down or pushing them away. One hyena went as far as leaping towards me and biting down on the side of my head, his mouth crushing thick locks of my mane. I growled, and with a twist of my head, I bit the hyena by the spine. I did not let him go as I thrashed him around while still paving a path through the horde. When I felt that the hyena had died, I spat him out and snatched another unfortunate hyena. Lions were already much larger than hyenas. The average lion was around 4 times bigger than the average hyena. So compared to me, they were akin to deadly puppies, and I treated them as such. They were completely and utterly outmatched. Their endless number was their only advantage. I hurried my pace when I noticed the horde moving along with us and thickening their numbers in the back. At that speed, the pride did not even have time to finish off the hyenas as I began bulldozing through at an incredible pace. Hyena bodies flew everywhere. I dipped my head and flung away any that dared to stand in the way. They were not cats and therefore not nimble. They crashed into the others, sometimes seriously injured and sometimes not. Eventually, we reached the entrance. I ran past the entrance while the rest of my pride immediately went down the gorge. I waited until everyone got in, and even after that I still waited. The hyenas swarmed me again. At this stage of the battle, they had finally become reckless. More than likely, seeing us running away had activated their predatory instinct. After all, running was a sign of weakness and their victory. They fought like beasts, assured of winning. They came at me. So many came at me all at once that they piled up on top of each other. One hyena, while standing on top of 2 piled-up hyenas, lunged at me and managed to bite the mane in my neck. I roared and swiped down my paw in a crushing force, tearing its scalp and cracking its skull. But right then, another bite on my mane from the back. Before I could respond, 3 more were clinging to my back and weighing me down. I lost my balance and fell, and hyenas piled against me once more. Jaws were snapping wildly. Some managed to bite me, others missed, while others bit each other. There was no care in the world anymore. Their numbers devoured me whole, and their chaos consumed me. I didn't feel pain in that moment, but I wished I did. When I was attacked from all sides, it would have been good for me to know the extent of the damage I received. But I didn't feel anything except rage and sluggishness. My blood mixed with the blood of the hyenas I dismantled. My whole body was drenched in red. My large mane had been watered down and made slick on my body. I no longer had the characteristics of a lion. I was only a red monstrosity focused on killing all the creatures before me. A swing of my paw no longer took down even one hyena. I was swarmed, and I had no room to create the necessary momentum. I tried my jaw, but I could barely see anything to aim. Wherever I bit down, I found flesh. But whether those were vitals or not was unknown. I crouched down low. It was the only way I could protect myself. But that was only an invitation for more to pile up on me. But then, in that moment, I decided to throw away my sound mind. I let instincts take the wheel of my body. Long ago, I found that a mix between instinct and sound mind was the best in combat. But my situation could not even be called combat anymore. It was utter chaotic violence. I decided to meet violence with violence. Primal with primal. A smart and calculating mind had no room in that moment of intense war. Sometimes, fire was the best way to fight fire. And so, I flipped around. No longer minding to expose my vulnerable parts, I twisted with great force. And with it, the hyenas on top of me fell like a collapsing hill. They crashed on each other and, unlike what my mind would have believed, none had time to attack me in my vitals. When my 4 limbs found solid footing again, I exploded up with a tearing roar. Gone was intelligence, gone was nobility. I was nothing but a beast pushed to the corner. And I began fighting as such. I was not a beast with a human mind, but only a beast. an animal designed to be superior to all. My mind was just a boon. My existence itself was already great. But although I no longer held thought, you would be surprised with how I fought. That was a result of superior instinct. It was not a primal instinct, but one that I had forged through countless battles, training, and combat. That was the driver of my body. Not given power but earned. I went full-on berserk mode once more. It was similar to how I fought in the beginning, but this was more raw, more violent, and more brutal towards both the hyenas and me. I clamped my jaw down on anything. I caught one hyena by the leg. Usually, I would let that go and aim for more vital parts of another hyena, always being more efficient. Or I would have pulled the hyena towards me and delivered a fatal blow to its head. But in my current state, I did none of them. I simply bit the hyena by the leg and began thrashing it around like I was doing laundry. I thrashed around wildly, using its body to hit the surrounding hyenas. I did no real damage, but just seeing their own being used like a ragdoll had a psychological effect on them. I swung the hyena around until his legs came off, and he was flung far away. I spat the leg out and immediately lunged at another hyena. This time, I found a neck. My trained jaw crushed the neck at record pressure. The hyena died so quickly it was ridiculous. But again, I did not stop. I continued biting until my jaw cut through everything, and his head was separated cleanly from his body. I spat the chunk of neck at the face of another hyena, and while he closed his eyes, my paw came down at him like an asteroid. His hind legs came up while his head was planted on the ground, completely smashed. My body went haywire. I could no longer feel pain or exhaustion. At this rate, I would probably collapse and die before I stopped fighting. But that was the state the horde had pushed me into. They had no choice but to receive me in full. I continued my rampage. I was a calamity in constant motion. The hyenas could barely even find time to attack, as I was always moving and killing their fellow hyenas. It was like their bones were made of dry twigs and their flesh was soft mud. In my bloodied rage, I noticed the hyenas following my pride into the path. That was part of the plan, to make sure some hyenas followed before I stopped them from entering. The ones that managed to get in could then be finished off by the pride, further decreasing their number. But although it was too early, I found myself running towards the entrance. I took a great leap once more, one hyena actually clinging onto me through all that as we both flew in the air. And then I crashed right into the hyenas that were trying to follow my pride. Their bodies were crushed like tomatoes. Their bones became like broken teeth. Roar. I roared, loud and angry. The sheer vibration seemed to shake their nerves. I was not thinking straight anymore, but it was instinctual to protect and defend my pride. I made sure every hyena that came to me never returned the same. Since I was not attacking the vitals and aiming for efficient killing, more hyenas became injured and damaged than dead. The silence of death was gone with my mauling. Instead, the battlefield was beginning to be filled with a cry of agony of the hyenas. Some hyenas had their snouts bitten off, some had their hind legs paralyzed as I bit the spine, some had half their chest and lungs missing, and some were running away and dragging their own intestines. Heads occasionally rolled down as well. When I caught a hyena by the neck, I bit until it was completely off. Blood sprayed everywhere, even in my mouth. But I simply gulped that down to quench my parched throat. With a mouth full of their blood, I roared. I became their living horror. First POV, I was a living horror. You might think that because my mind was no longer in control, I would lose my efficiency and effectiveness in the battle as a whole. Although that was true to a certain extent, it was not the complete truth. Because, contrary to all expectations, my new strategy of mindless rampage worked better than if I had killed them efficiently. The sheer scale of my brutality achieved some things that my sound mind would otherwise not have achieved. Due to the lack of precision, the number of hyenas I hurt became more than the number I killed. But that didn't mean my output of damage had decreased. It was quite the opposite, actually. I was swinging wildly and crushing every one of them in some way or another. The fact that there were more injuries than deaths led to an obvious conclusion. Fear spread among them like wildfire. Their reckless attacks and their ferocity were drowned by the screams of agony and pain coming from the injured hyenas. Some of them screamed with their jaws hanging loose, others with eyes gouged half out. There were hyenas with ribs jutting from their sides like broken spears, while some crawled away, dragging what was left of their legs. The screams and the cries were deafening. The wasteland had finally turned into hell on earth. The hyenas realized there was something worse than death. The brave souls ready to die were not ready to face hell. My rampage had made every last one of them a coward. In their fear, the horde tried to swarm me from my flanks and back once more. No one was brave enough to face me head-on. Their courage only warranted a sneak attack from behind. So they came like a wind from all sides. And when I saw that, I moved down into the gorge. Again, it was not even an intention or a conscious thought. It was the work of pure battle instinct that was imprinted on me. The gorge provided me with a perfect place to make a last stand. The tight space made it so that only 6 or 7 hyenas could come at a time. And the horde could no longer attack me from the back or behind. Now they had no way of attacking me from safe angles. They were forced to face my jaw in all its blind rage and fury. The walls echoed with their howls, turning every cry into a chorus of madness. Dust rose with every stampede of their paws, mixing with the blood mist, creating a red haze that burned my eyes and throat. My claws tore into the rock as I backed slowly, marking the walls with long scars while their bodies piled at my feet. I moved back slowly as the horde continued to push forward. At this point, no sane mind wanted to fight me, but the clueless hyenas at the back forced them towards what they saw as hell. A red monstrosity covered in their blood, carrying the scent of their death. The hyenas continued to suffer. I swung my paw, and one hyena's head spun nearly all the way around. I bit down on another skull and felt it collapse like dry fruit between my teeth. I smashed another into the wall so hard that his body left a red stain on the stone, sliding down limp and twitching. The gorge amplified every sound, the tearing of flesh, the shattering of bones, and the guttural roars from my throat. Until the moment they stopped, I didn't. When I came back to my senses, blood was flowing like a river in the gorge. Perhaps it was because the gorge used to be a river, but the blood flowed perfectly. It streamed around my paws, carrying chunks of flesh, fur, and bone alike. The walls dripped red as if the gorge itself had opened its veins. My body was all red, my own blood and the blood of hyenas unrecognizable. The only thing you could see other than a mass of red was my eyes, which were slowly gaining clarity. I panted heavily, each breath hurting my lungs. It was like my lungs were working to the limit and were on the verge of bursting. But that was enough, because it was already over. The hyenas ran back, trying desperately to crawl back out of the gorge. Everyone was in such a rush that they got stuck in the tight spaces. Every time they looked back, their eyes shook in terror towards me. I held my ground but no longer attacked. My mind recalled what the heck just happened and quickly assessed the situation again. After a while, the hyenas left the gorge. But they left bodies with them. Some I killed, but some died of a stampede when they tried to get out of the gorge all at once. There were also dozens of hyenas moving, but they were too damaged to crawl out. They whined, their voices echoing still in the gorge, so there was never silence. I huffed before finally turning back to leave. My body was completely numb as I made my way down the rocky gorge. I did not know if I was exhausted or if I was heavily injured. The blood in my body was still warm, and the beat of my heart was still rapid. When I came out of the path and into the outside world, I was greeted by my pride resting and tending to each other's wounds. On the ground in front of them were the corpses of 30 or so hyenas. Grim immediately flew and landed in front of me. His face was full of worry, but his ugly bald head did not really support the concern on his face. So I gave him a smile. "I am doing fine, Grim. These are only the blood of the hyenas," I said. I lied. I did not feel it yet, but I was sure I had many injuries on me. The war was tougher than I envisioned. There were so many factors that you cannot consider until you experience it once. 400 hyenas was not 10 times 40, it was its own entire thing. It was a completely different scale of disaster and danger. "Tell the vultures to clean up and count the casualties," I said after a smile. Grim still looked concerned, but duty was his first priority. "As you wish, my lord," he said and flew away to complete the order to his best ability. Grim was not a bird of half measures. I continued walking until I reached the pride. Zuri came forward, and before even reaching her, I collapsed at her feet. "Leo!" She called and rushed to help me, but I denied the help. The rest of the pride also stood up, their focus entirely on me. I knew I had to be strong or at least act strong in front of them. So I pushed myself up with strength way past my limit and stood up straight. I stood proud and strong. Just like the permanent image they had of me in their heart. I was their invincible king. I walked past Zuri with a nod. I would love to hug and rest in her embrace, but it was not over just yet. Let's head deeper into the north. We don't want to fight a second wave if there are any, I said, and they nodded, obedient. They all came to me and gently nudged themselves on me. It was a way for them to show concern, respect, and admiration all at once. They nudged their heads on my jaw before turning and leaving. One by one they came and headed deeper into the outside world. We would find a safe place there where we could recover. Zuri followed them too, but she was last. The concern on her face never disappeared. After everyone had left, I carefully took my first step as well. But unlike what I feared, I did not collapse immediately and I was able to walk. I breathed a sigh of relief and followed my pride, which was disappearing deeper into the forest. I walked carefully and slowly. But right before I went too far, I felt a tingle in my instinct. My ears perked up and I slowly turned back towards the plateau, which was the Pride Land. I saw nothing but the vultures that had come down and were enjoying the corpses of the hyenas. But when I looked up and at the edge of the plateau, I saw him. Scar. He stood there at the edge of the cliff, looking down at me with his horrible eyes and ugly face. He did not join the battle, but he had watched everything unfold. We locked eyes, no one saying anything. But there was something akin to a curse in both our gazes. I wished he would come down and try his luck while he thought I was injured. I would still tear him apart with half my jaw. In the end, I simply mouthed to him, "Don't run." Scar saw that, and after giving me a deep frown, he turned away and disappeared from the cliff. I remained in place, still looking at the edge where he stood. And then I called one of the vultures that was beginning to enjoy the spoils of the war. "Hey, you," I said, and 3 vultures responded. I ordered all of them. "Keep an eye on that lion. Tell me if he is leaving or running away," I said. The vultures nodded, and finally, I turned and followed behind my pride. The first battle was over and the victory was ours. Third POV. The researchers who followed Leo and his pride on their journey were all huddled into their makeshift camp at this moment. Their camp was more settled than usual because the pride had not moved after reaching their destination. Usually, Leo's pride would be on a constant move through the Serengeti, so the researchers only made tents to sleep in while never making a solid camp. But now, they had the chance to do so. The 3 jeeps that they brought with them had not been operated for days now. They worked as metal walls that surrounded the camp instead. The number of researchers in the Serengeti was quite large at this point. Documenting Leo and his pride became the priority in animal science, so there were lots of scientists and zoologists. However, the group that followed Leo's pride in their journey consisted of only 8 individuals. The rest were left in the Serengeti to monitor the land and the effects of Leo's absence in that region. Although they stayed behind, what they found and the things they were witnessing in this moment were just as intriguing as what was happening in the Pride Lands, but that topic was for another time. For now, let us look at the 8 researchers that camped at the outskirts of the Pride Lands. Currently, Kyle Ramirez and Joseph Joe Mwangi were operating drones. They were sitting at the center of the camp with tablets in front of them that showed the footage of what their drone was seeing in real time. The rest of the members were sitting or standing behind these 2. They peeked over their heads and shoulders to look at the footage on the screen. And in that moment, there was a pin-drop silence. "You're not messing with us, are you?" Malik said while staring intently at what was playing on the screen. "I wish I were," Ramirez said while controlling the drone with shaky hands. "So we are all seeing this." "All of us," Malik said again. The others didn't even reply, only nodding dumbly at his question. It's been a full minute now and they still could not believe what they were seeing through the drone. That is a lot of hyenas. The drone was capturing a horde of hyenas gathering in one place. Their number was in the hundreds, around 500 according to their rough estimate. The crew continued to watch in absolute silence, each one trying to make logical sense of the situation. No one wanted to speak unless they found some sense in the situation. Therefore, no one spoke. In the end, it was Dr. Thompson who spoke first. "Any idea, Elena?" he asked. Professor Elena Morales was one of the people who was allowed to join the crew due to her specialty. She had an MSc in zoology and a PhD in animal behavior studies. But her main specialty was in social signaling and communication networks of animals. She had been an imperative member of the team, and she was also working on a new theory that she had. Liaquar basically theorized that animals might have means of communication that humans are not aware of. This theory was inspired by watching Leo interact with not only nature but also the animals around him. "I don't have the slightest clue," she admitted. The so-called hyena clans usually only have a few members and are capped out at around 80 members, 100 members in rare cases. But even then, they never gather in one place because that amount of hyenas would devour everything too quickly. The other researchers nodded, agreeing with her facts. But the scene before them negated that fact by a big margin. There must be hundreds of hyenas in this horde. Those are fictional numbers for a hyena clan. But what is really messing with my head and everything that I know and learned is how they are able to gather in such a group from all over the territory. It's not like an elephant herd had died from a disease and they gathered from all over the land to scavenge. They simply gathered out of nowhere. That requires coordination and messaging at a scale that we never thought was possible for hyenas to accomplish, she said, scratching her head. But clearly that was not enough because she began pulling her hair and messing up the locks. For a professor like her, to see that what she learned over the years was proven wrong was definitely frustrating. And at this age and at the height of her career, she thought she knew a lot. But she found out she knew nothing really. "Don't you have anything to say, Doctor?" She asked him back after admitting her ignorance. "No. I have nothing of weight to say," he said, "but I think their behavior points towards a central power among the hyenas. It's the only reason why they would gather. They had been commanded or summoned by their king." "And you think the lion is their king?" Hannah said, her eyes wide. Dr. Tonson shrugged. "Who knows? But then you will have to question the very fundamentals of zoology as we know it. What kind of situation would lead hyenas to be under a lion? Or how did the lion convince the hyenas in the first place? With their number, they could easily kill all known lion prides in the history of the world. Extinct lions included. So why would they have a lion or any other beast on the earth, for that matter, to control and lead them?" Dr. Robert Hargrove took this time to share his opinion. He had a D.Phil in zoology, passing as the best student from Oxford in his batch. He had a varied background and published many research papers, especially on the evolution of animal cooperation tactics. "It truly is a situation we have never seen before. Just when we thought we knew a lot, Mother Nature finds ways to surprise us," he said. He was of a similar age to Dr. Tonson, so the two were quite close. "The only comparison I can draw is from wolf superpacks. Normally, wolf packs are around 8 to 10, but in rare cases, they can form coalitions between packs and their number can surpass 40. But these alliances are formed only in a situation of abundance, not from lack of resources like we see now," he said. The other researchers listened carefully. They all appreciated each other's specialties and knew that the combination of their knowledge and perspectives is what would lead them to the truth that they desperately wanted to know. Or if you want interspecies, we can look at the ocean. I published a paper on it actually, about how dolphins, tuna, and other creatures of the ocean would form alliances to hunt and corral prey schools of fish. They team up to trap the prey, and because of the abundance, there was no rivalry, he said. But both those cases only happen in times of abundance, Hannah pointed out. Then she turned back to the screen and said thoughtfully, "Do you think that the so-called wasteland used to be a prosperous land and only recently turned into a wasteland?" she said. She was not as knowledgeable as her fellow researchers, but her observations and conclusions from facts around her were sharp. That would make sense. The quick transition from an abundant land to a wasteland could be due to factors such as drought and the huge stress put on the resources by the hyenas, Dr. Tonson said. That was a much-needed breakthrough for the crew. They felt like they finally had one piece of a giant, unknown puzzle. Which fits right back in with Leo coming from an abundant region where he had all the food in the world during cubhood to grow as big as he did, Malik added. Now that made sense. That was starting to make a lot of sense. Do you think Leo lost his tail to the hyenas? Hannah asked suddenly. Dr. Tonson had another moment of realization, and that is why he came back to this place. And with his high intelligence comes grudge and hatred. He wants revenge and to take back the land where he was born. The quiet crew finally burst with noise and activity. They discussed their new conclusions and how everything fit with the rest they knew. Some of the things they discussed were close to the truth, some were exaggerated truths, while most were straight up false and were mere fictional speculations. But none of that would explain why the hyenas decided to gather in one place so suddenly, Elena said after they had had enough time to discuss, and what they were saying was starting to become too ridiculous. Maybe they are gathering to fight each other and cannibalize due to the lack of resources? It could be an unknown instinct to us because nothing had pushed hyenas to that extreme situation, Robert said. You mean like how grasshoppers turn into locusts? Dr. Tonson asked, incredulous. It's just a speculation. Robert shrugged. At this point, they were starting to throw away what they knew and were ready to be taught by what they saw. Their high-level education was clearly void when studying about Leo. They had to have an open mind on what was possible and what was not. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves because we have a problem, Ramirez said all of a sudden, his voice cutting through and silencing the discussion. All eyes turned back on the screen. The horde is moving, Ramirez said. He then panned out the scene, flying his drone higher into the air so he could show the horde and where they were headed to. And they are headed right to the path leading down here, he said. The news hit with a heavy impact on the researchers. Oh shit. They watched from the drone as the horde began moving like a dark flood through the landscape. They were quickly covering ground like a disease and were heading their way into the outside world. Should we do something? Malik asked, a bead of sweat falling from his forehead. What else can we do but observe? Rober said, and then he adopted a thoughtful look. This got me thinking, are they gathering to hunt together outside their plateau? Having such a huge number effectively guarantees them a successful hunt, but there will be too many mouths to feed, he said. Not if they hunt big prey like a giraffe. We saw Leo take down one and there seemed to be quite a population of them in this region. Dr. Tonson added. Oh, that's true. But you think the hyenas know all that? He questioned once more. There was a moment of silence as each and every one among the crew had a thoughtful look. They continued their own train of thought from Rober's hypothesis, but there was a moment where something clicked in each of their minds. If they are coming here to hunt, then they would certainly eat anything. They would even fight a giraffe for the meat. They are probably starving. Robert said. That's true, Dr. Tonson said and nodded wisely like a sage. Then he turned to Malik, their driver. We should leave immediately. That's what I've been trying to say. Malik said he truly felt like the sanest person in the crew. The crew then moved immediately. But before they could do much, Joseph, the other drone operator, spoke in a grave tone. We have another problem. The researchers gathered back and looked at the screen held by Joseph this time. What they saw caused them to blink dumbfoundedly a few times before their face turned into horror. Leo and his pride are on the move, and they are going up the plateau, Joseph said, his tone grave. That's insane. Hannah said, wide-eyed in panic on her face. The horde is coming in their direction? Don't they know that? I thought Leo had the vultures. But while the rest were panicking, Dr. Tonson was quiet. He stood there, like a statue drained of all energy. Are you okay, T? Robert asked, sensing something was wrong. We have to do something. We have to stop them. They can't meet the horde. Hannah and Elena were both nearly screaming, concerned for the lion they had come to root for. Dr. Tonson rubbed his head, hating the conclusion that his mind had come to. When he gave a look, Robert had a moment of realization as well. Shit. You don't think? He asked, but Dr. Tonson simply nodded. It's like they could understand each other on a deep level. That would make sense, Dr. Tonson said. Finally, the other members of the crew took notice of the solemn silence shared between them. What's going on? Elena asked. I don't think we need to do anything, Dr. Tonson said. I think Leo and his pride are moving not out of ignorance but because they know the hyenas are coming. What? Hannah asked, still not catching on. This is war, Robert said. This is a war between animals, like the ones we used to have as bedtime stories. And the hyenas are not gathering for no reason, nor were they gathering to hunt. That was the gathering of an army, Robert said, and then his hand went to his head immediately. Impossible, Elena said. The word impossible was quickly losing its weight and meaning the more they discovered about the real explanation of what was happening around them. But the scene they witnessed through the drone only proved their words. It was a scene that was going to shake the world when released.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.